Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Women of True Grit. I'm excited to welcome you. This event was inspired by Edie Hand in her book, Edie Hand's Women of True Grit, and you'll meet her in a moment. And this was sponsored by the College of Media and Entertainment, the Distinguished Lecture Fund, and the June Anderson Women's Center, and our National Women's History Month Committee. So let me get all that paperwork out of the way. So we're excited to be here. This will go from about 1 till 6 today. We have 3 panels, and at 2 o'clock we'll take a break for 30 minutes to honor some women on campus who are making a difference and are trailblazers. We have women from all walks of life speaking to you today, and their success is certainly impressive and inspirational, but what we want to talk about today is really their resilience, because every woman here has endured challenges. They've had cancer, some several times. They've overcome sexual abuse. They've had divorce. They've had loved ones die. I mean, you name it, these women have overcome it. So let me first welcome Edie Hand. Edie is an international speaker, a businesswoman, entrepreneur, a media personality, filmmaker, and a mother. She's the author of 35 books. She's also been a TV producer, a host, advertising agency owner. She is a woman of true grit herself, and she came up with the idea to write a whole book dedicated to women of true grit. Her book is out front, so please grab one on your way out. And before I welcome her to the stage, I want you to watch this video.
No looking back, once you get this view, you realize it's always been you. Your winning smile, your dreaming heart kindles a spark when you say, mirror, mirror on my wall, show me I can do it all. Find my way right past the quit. I was born with true grit.
The most special mentor in my life was actually my mother. She always told my sister and I that we would never have to depend on a man, that she wanted us to go to college and get an education so that we could take care of ourselves.
I asked her how she got to be an astronaut, and I just thought how wonderful it would be to be able to climb onto a rocket or a spacecraft and to blast off.
I mean, we all have gifts. Everybody's got gifts. Some have one, some have many. But if we bury those, then guess what happens? There's no promise that we're going to be able to do that tomorrow.
Keep going. Be a seeker, because whatever you seek, you're going to find.
We got sisters holding strong, lifting souls and righting wrongs. They can never let us forget. We were born with true grit. We were born with true grit.
So help me welcome Edie Hand.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm looking, oh, there you are. Well, Women of True Grit. For those of you that don't know what that is and how it was inspired, certainly if you pick up a copy of the book, you'll see what inspired me the most and the people along this journey. I am quite seasoned, so I have had a few rides in my lifetime. The Women of True Grit began when I was very young, and my grandmother inspired me about wearing pearls, and the pearls of many colors that I wear, and that she specially had made for me. And she taught me about that open oyster shell that has a speck of grit, that it only takes a speck of grit inside of an oyster shell to form that beautiful pearl. And once that pearl is formed, it's ready. It's ready for its beauty to be exposed. And I think we as women, and you men that are here, that it takes, we go through a lot of irritations in life ourselves. And so through that, it helps us to progress to become the person we need to be in the different seasons of our lives and the different experiences in our lives. And I think they have a slide that they'll put up that has the different colors of the pearls that I talk about. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the art of my storytelling starts with a white pearl. Now, how many of you out there have had second chances? Maybe third. Okay, a few of you. We all need another chance in life. And that white pearl is all about the purity of one's faith and the second chances that we're given in life. I can remember when this was a time at 4:07 one morning, and I got a real early phone call from my publicist in New York. And I thought something was wrong because Harvey called me. And so I remember when he called, he says, you know, all those rejections that we got on your book, he said, I got a big offer for you. And I remember then I was driving down later in that day on Highway 65, and Harvey calls me again. And he talks like this. And I said, hey, Harvey. And he said, I got some news for you. He said, Simon & Schuster and Random House were bidding over this particular book. And I said, so, well, how much are they offering? So I don't know what's big to him and big to me might be two different things. And so, trust me, it was more money than I'd ever made in a year. And he says, you think you can call your friend Buddy Killen and see if he still want to do this with you? And I said, oh, he'll do it with me. And he said, what would it take? And so I said, you know what? I said, I haven't talked to Buddy, but I'll say he'll say yes. But I said, for giving me this chance and this opportunity, I said, I'd like, if they'll give us X number of dollars, these were hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I said, I want to donate part of this money to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital because they helped to spare a lot of my family's lives and my life. And so I'd like for that to happen. And so we were able to make an agreement with the Doubletree arm of Random House. And so as Buddy Killen, for any of you that don't know who that is, he was an incredible publisher that helped to discover the likes of Dolly Parton. He published so many countless hits in his lifetime, and it was a part of writing many songs. And if you went to Music Row, you would see the roundabout that says Buddy Killen Roundabout today. So, and Buddy was from Florence, Alabama, near where I grew up. So that was pretty cool. So that was a wonderful opportunity that we could do not only to learn to pay life forward, but to also receive something awesome. And I tell you that in life, I've had a lot of fun too. And I see that pink pearl. Now, some of you just may be, come on in, guys. Yeah, you might be too young to know this name, but some of you that have a little more season in your life will know this name. Do any of you know the name of Phyllis Diller? Okay, a few of you do. Okay, well, if you think of Tina Fey, do you know Tina Fey, the younger, the comedian? Okay, she was kind of like that, only her hair was out there. She was, and you might not remember Bob Hope, but you know Jimmy Fallon, and he is the likes of Saturday Night Live. Bob Hope was that kind of giant in the era of when I was young. Well, I had the privilege to start the first Women of True Grit over 20 years ago. And I was out in Los Angeles because my son lives there and works and is a working actor. And so I got this opportunity to interview Joanne Carson, which all of Johnny Carson's, y'all might not remember him, but he was one of the late night greats like you have of the talk shows today. But this was the smart wife. He had 4 wives, and they were all named Joanne. And Joanne was the smart one because she got all the comedy rights to his songs. So I was interviewing her at her house in Beverly Hills. She says, Edie, have you ever met Phyllis Diller? And I said, no, but I'd love to. And she said, I can arrange that. Well, little did she know, I used to do Phyllis Diller impersonations, and I loved Phyllis when I was a young girl. And at the cheerleader clinics, I would jump up, on this chest of drawers and do a little Phyllis for everybody. And so I thought you might like to see what that was like. So I was going to be getting the interview, of course, that next day. And I called Link, and I said, Link, you're going to have to cancel work tomorrow because you're driving me to Phyllis Diller's house. Now, Phyllis Diller lived in a sprawling estate in Brentwood, California. So when I arrived at her house, I had a big bag. And just before I was about to go in the door, Link says, you're not going to embarrass me, are you, Mother? Of course not. Mothers don't embarrass their children. So anyway, I go in, and Phyllis says, hey, you want to get your picture made with me? And I said, well, of course I do. And so, Link, you want to take the picture of us? Well, she puts me in the corner in a dark spot and has a spotlight for her to stand in. And so it was hysterical to me that was my first moment of Phyllis Diller. But as I went into her living room, this is a great life lesson. I sat down, and she said, well, before I give you my story, I heard you do a little Phyllis. I said, who in the world told you that? Oh, I know people. And so she said, before I tell you my story, you have to do Phyllis for me. I look over at my son. I say, I'm sorry, Link. And, I'm an old theater girl, so I reach down into my bag and I pull out my boa. Now, this boa is Phyllis Diller's original boa. She had a lot of them. She had an incredible costume room upstairs in her house. And I ended up with this when I left that day. But I did put my boa on, and I thought I'd do a little Phyllis for y'all. Like to see me do a little Phyllis? So I'll improvise with your book, Marion. And this would be a shirt with a hole in it, okay? And I said, hi, if you knew my husband Vang, you knew he didn't do this when he flexed his muscles, because he uses both his hands to drink his milk, and I still have to cut his meat. Girls, getting you snowy bleach. It's the one right detergent for you. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. So when we did Phyllis, here was my lesson and my son's from Phyllis. When she started to tell her story, she said, hey, I was in an old comedy club here in Hollywood, and there wasn't many people in the room, and said, I was bombing, or I thought I was. And said there was a man in the back of the room that had a suit on. And I thought, I wonder what he's here for. Then the second night, she had the same thing. And she said, Lord, I better get my pocketbook and get out of here. They're not even going to pay me. There's not enough people. But this guy with the suit on in the back came running up to her as she was getting her pocketbook to go get in her car, where her mentally challenged husband and her 5 kids, because she was homeless. And he said, Miss Diller, this is my card. My name is Bob Hope, and I'm going to change your life. One person can change your life, can make a difference in anything you go through or you think you can't crawl up out of. And she says, and I want you and Link to come into my main sitting room. She has this beautiful she did, had this beautiful baby grand piano and a life-size portrait of Bob Hope. And I loved it that she not only honored him and how he had honored her. The seasoned ones that know of the film she was in, the programs, the entertaining of our veterans, that she made such a difference. And you know, she helped me too. She got me interviews that I would never get into Hollywood's doors to do because she liked me. I tell you, young students, if you'll just always be real and be who you are, you'll go far with whatever your dream is. I can tell you another pearl of mine is the silver pearls. And it certainly is wisdom. You wouldn't be on this college campus if you weren't seeking it. Whether you're in music, entertainment, we might not all be physicists, but achieving extraordinary things. It takes extraordinary resilience to do that. I learned that from a little country lady in Northwest Alabama named Alice. Now, my grandmother, Alice, and Elvis Presley's grandmother, Minnie Mae, were sisters, and I got to hang out with the Big E. So I was a young teenager, and I had wonderful memories and opportunities of my grandmother and Elvis's grandmother dipping snuff, and I don't know if y'all know what that is, but they dip snuff in the can. They just kind of would get a little out and put it on a black gum toothbrush and put it in their jaw and get a little wet and put it in there, and they'd tell stories, and I'd listen to them, and they'd spit out a little bit and do their thing. And Elvis thought that was hysterical. Well, I know Edith's here. She's got black gum toothbrushes in the refrigerator. But it's those simple things. Here's one of the things they taught me. This was a story they were telling me one night at Graceland. Elvis had bought Minnie Mae a red wingback chair sit in her bedroom, and she said, we were so poor, you know, they only had 2 rooms, they had nothing. And she said, boy, when we get money, let's buy us a wingback chair. So they had a red wingback chair in her bedroom, and that's what she sat in. And they would say, now, Edith, when we're not around and you're going through some things in life, you're going to get on a ride, and you might fall in some old mud holes. Now, you're going to have to get up, girl, and get yourself washed off. And then there's going to be some curves in life that you just don't think you can get around. And she said, but you can. And said, I want you to remember that we'll always be right here, and that there'll always be a ride when you're not here and you're passing it on. Pass something on that is of value. And I tell you, young people and seasoned people, that I am still learning. I am still learning. And I hope I do until the day I transition. And by learning from my grandmother this, she also bought me my very first book that really, it brought to life the power of words. If you're a songwriter, if you're a singer, if you're a writer of novels, or you're a screenplay writer, those words are powerful. She gave me this book of The Velveteen Rabbit when I was a young girl. And she would sit and read this to me. I want to share this with you that is so, I think, fits even today. What is real? Asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender, before Nana came in to tidy the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside of you and stick out handles? Real isn't how you were made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that just happens. You know, when a child loves something long enough, it becomes real. Do you have that in your life? You think about something you believe in long enough, even your dreams, a person you want to share your life with, a dream of your work, a dream. And he says, well, if it becomes real, does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. And he says, sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. And if you're always honest, it matters. Well, does it happen all at once, like being wound up? And he said, no, it just becomes. In my lifetime, I have learned to be genuine. I have learned to be real. When I have walked with the giants, as the Elvis Presleys, these wonderful, extraordinary women that you'll hear today, I got to dine tea with the Queen Mum in London. Where else would a young girl from rural Northwest Alabama get to have these extraordinary opportunities? And I tell you what helped me in life was I built healthy relationships. If I can teach you anything today or encourage you, it is the people you surround yourself with and how you build it. Because if you treat people right, they will treat you right and they will show up. They will be there. And from those silver pearls, and life is the black pearl. It's a path through grief. I'm going to paint you a story about my family and share with you one of my greatest things that I had to overcome. And had I not had these incredible splashes of wisdom, of pearls of hope from my grandmother, my mother, and wonderful women, strong women, and a few strong men in my life, I would not have been able to work through this. Now, imagine this in Northwest Alabama in a little place called Burnout. Does anybody in here know where Burnout is? Oh, I love it, okay. Well, my three brothers and I, every afternoon after school, we get off the school bus and we would get on our horses and we would ride to Schubert's Corner, and we would write plum on the sign, burnt plum out, because nothing was happening in Burnout, I can tell you that. And we thought we were too cool for school. But now my horse was named, my brother's, I'll start with my brother's horse, David. His horse was named Spotted Cloud because he loved to watch The Lone Ranger and Tonto way back then. And this was a Western film, for those of you that wouldn't know. And my brother, Philip, now, he was too small, so he rode on my horse. It was called Trigger, because I liked Dale Evans and Roy Rogers. So I'd throw him on the back of my quarter horse. And then now there was Terry. And Terry, he named his horse, he had a little Shetland pony, and it was named Polly, because he was in love with our Avon lady. We were known for riding those horses, and Mama would always have us, when we got off the school bus, some hot baked sweet potatoes and chocolate doodad cookies. I don't know where she came up with that, but that's what we had, and we loved it. We would go to the Indian Mounds. On our property, we had 40 acres, and those horses would graze, and we would share our dreams. Now, I wanted to grow up, and I said, oh, I'm going to be a movie star, and I'm going to be a big famous writer. I'm going to do, and they said, oh, yeah, sure, call us when you get your mansion. And David said, oh, I'm going to be a race car driver. He loved fast cars, and my dad kept a 56 Chevy, and one of his, he had a big work area where he worked on cars and trucks that he loved, and so he wanted to be like that. And then Terry, he wanted to be like one of our grandfathers, was a builder of homes, a construction guy, and he said, I'm going to build big buildings or bridges. I'm going to be an architect. We could barely say that word in Burnout. And then, you know, my brother Philip, he was kind of shy and didn't fit in, if any of you know what that's like. And he'd say, well, I think I'm going to be a singer and a songwriter. I'm going to be like our uncles that make music and Elvis, and because, you know, they get all the girls. So little did I know that growing up with those young boys, that was my growing old with them. When I was in college, my brother Terry, my first brother David, was killed in an automobile accident at the age of 19. A tragic car accident that ripped us all apart. I don't think I was ever the same. I was going to head to New York and star on Broadway, and it changed my course of life. Things can change your destiny. And my second brother, Philip, was killed in an automobile accident 10 years later at the age of 23. And then 10 more years later, my brother Terry was stricken with an aneurysm in the middle of the brain. My mother By then I had a younger sister, and I caregave for him for over 7 years. And as he was about to lose his speech, he said, "Edith, would you tell our story about the importance of kindness and doing good things for one another? Because you, my sister, have a pure heart." And so, you know, I can tell you this story, it's so true, vividly as we're in the art world, is I promised him I would come to him when he couldn't speak, and I did when I was called, and held him in my arms, and I told him the stories of what it was like in burnout, those simpler times, and that he was about to get on a great white horse, and he was going to cross a river that I couldn't go to. But I was with him, and he spoke with his eyes as if to say it was okay. And you know, as he died in my arms, the hospice nurse told me that there was a mist that came in that room, and it went out the side door that my father had built so we could take his wheelchair out. And I yelled, I said, "Someone go to the barn and let the horses run." He had 10 horses, and I remember vividly going out the door. No one followed me, and I sat and I listened to those horses run wild, and I felt the touch of 3 sets of unseen hands. It was real to me, and it changed me forever. And I tell you, the lessons I learned from that, David taught me, my oldest brother, about laughter, how important it was to laugh with friends, and even to laugh through grief if you can, and hard things that you think, how could you laugh? And with Philip, I learned the lesson of seizing the moments in life. Let me tell you something, if you're going out into the world to hope for your dream, you better have a lot of resilience packed up, and you better get out there and don't ever give up till you get what you're looking for. That dream may change in different seasons, but it's out there. And I remember that I learned from Terry the most about courage and what it was like to face so many hard things for a good-looking 6'3" young man to be debilitated and a prisoner in his body. There are different handicaps that we deal with in life, but I don't think one is quite as bad as being a prisoner in your body. But there are things going on in this world that are horrible, but there are beautiful things. And so from those boys and learning from them, it helped me to be a better storyteller. I may be the last one standing of my family of it, but I can tell you that I probably cried 1,000,000 tears when I go back to that old home place and go sit on my bench. But you know, it's okay now. You have to get to a place to where it's okay, and you can let things go, and you can live again. Which takes me to that purple pearl that I certainly have learned the importance of leadership and creativity to make better choices. Have any of y'all ever made bad choices? Yes, okay. I'm glad you're down there. Okay. And it's so true that we learn from our choices, right? We learn from different things that can turn our life around. Well, I tell you, the thing that I think the most that turned my life around was the mentors in my life. When I was a young girl, my mentor was my high school business teacher that saw something in me that she thought I should be in the arts. Everything I auditioned for, she made sure I got it. I don't know if I was the best, but she thought I was. And all it takes is that one person to believe in you. And I remember when I was in college, when I was in school, it was called Florence State University in Northwest Alabama. And my drama coach, Gladys Shepard, I was only 19 years old, and she took me to New York for my first time, and I was bitten. I saw something bigger than tall trees and horses, and I thought, I could maneuver here. So I was a country girl that learned how to maneuver in the city traffic. I was listening. I became a good listener. If you want to make it in this world, take the tool of listening to listen to what people want if you're going to go into the business world and give them what they need. Not what you want, but what they need. And I think at the seasons of my life now and seeing where I am, that I get to the teal pearl. And this is just before my last pearl of gold I'll tell you about, is, you know, our total wellness for our mind and our body. Now look, like I said, I'm seasoned, and I'm always working to try to look better and feel better, because it is our temple. You know, I may wear funky clothes sometimes and funny tennis shoes. I might even smoke a cigar, you know, I don't know. But I try to enjoy life. I make what I do, I try to find some fun in it. It's not always easy in the things we have to do. But I can tell you that in that teal pearl of the mental health of things, have you ever been where you were down so low that you didn't think you could get up tomorrow? Well, I guess I don't know if you could see this, most women do not travel with a sword. But I'm going to, this sword, the story of this sword, of why for mental health that made such a difference for me. Again, things happen in the middle of the night to me. I don't know about you, but do the demons ever come for your mind at night? And they try to tell you you're not worthy and you're not going to make it and you can't accomplish this and you can't do that. Well, I'm no different. One night, I found out I had been betrayed for a lot of money. And when you get to a season in life that you think, oh, I got plenty of money, I'm going to be fine. And then you made a bad choice. And I thought, well, I've lived a great life. I think I'm going to be like the Notebook. I'm just going to lay down and go to sleep and not get up tomorrow. But that wasn't what God had in mind for me. My faith has been a strong thing that has helped me. And I'm late in the night, early in the morning hours. Usually things happen for me around 4:07. Was that my phone went off. And somebody had left me a message. And I normally cut it off at night unless I've got to get up real early and I want to set it. And it was a young lady that had seen me at a luncheon. She said, I don't know what's going on with you, Miss Edie, but something's wrong. I'm here if you want to talk. And I thought, I don't know her that well. What would I tell her? But she saw it, and she was this young attorney at a leadership meeting. And she said, but I couldn't sleep tonight. I couldn't sleep tonight. So I was said that I would have to, I wanted you to hear something about Girls with Swords. So I don't know if you've heard of the book, but Girls with Swords, and she had about the sword was if you have a sword, and I happened to found one, which was no coincidence, I think, and said, with you raise up the lioness, which this had a lion's head, within you to be and do what you need to do to carry on. So I realized I was not done. And that you too, and as I end with the gold pearl, is life is about the endurance of strength and courage that you'll hear from each of these women today, of how important it is to share your stories of grit and what it means. You know, I'll give you one quick thing of gold of strength. I learned a lot about entrepreneurship, owning a company through my Aunt Kleinice, and I lost her yesterday at 4:07 in the morning, but she was very seasoned and ready to go. You don't ever know where you're going in your life, but be ready, be prepared emotionally, as financially as you can, and go for your dreams. We cannot control life's situations, but we can control how we respond to them. Thank you. Well, thank you. Well, I'm going to introduce to you, I have the privilege of an extraordinary lady, and it's Dr. Sheila Nash Stevenson. She is a NASA engineer, and she was the first African American woman in the state of Alabama to receive her PhD in physics. She holds a patent for an optimal fiber holder, and she won NASA's Modern Figure Award, which means that she was selected to go to the premiere of the movie of Hidden Figures. So I'm sure she's going to tell you about what it was like meeting Kevin Costner. But more importantly in that, she is a young lady from Alabama that went from the cotton patch to the rockets and the moon and the stars and beyond. And I give you Dr. Sheila Nash Stevens.
Good afternoon, everyone. How we doing? Good. Y'all are just really too quiet. I can't do this if y'all gonna be quiet. We got to make some noise or something. We got to do something. Make some noise. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Edie, for including me in the festivities. I appreciate that. I have been trying to tell her that I'm a behind-the-scenes person, and she insists that I come out and talk. So I'm going to try and make her proud. This is kind of a cool little video that I just thought it was cool, so I thought I wanted to show that to y'all. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, good deal, good deal. I'm not a media person, and so I don't have any little nice props and stuff. But I'm here anyway. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, so I am going to tell you a story. There will be a quiz afterwards, so you have to listen very closely, all right? All right? Yeah. Y'all got to talk back. Come on now. Come on. And I'm country, so if I say something that doesn't sound right, just, you know, give it to me being country. Okay. Let me tell you a story about a child that was born in the backwoods of the country. And this child was born with 3 strikes against them. They were born in the South, they were born female, and they were born an African American. Now, society would tell you that this child probably wouldn't do well, would probably end up in the system. In fact, this child had a cousin from up north that told her she would have 5 children and never get married. And now, for those of you all who might not know, sometimes relatives from up north felt they were a little bit better than the ones from down south, so that was kind of a thing, and we understood that. We understood that. And to add to the strikes of this child, her mom and dad separated when she was very young. And she and her mom and her little brother went to live with her grandmother. Eventually, the little brother went back to live with Dad because he just could not stand being away from his dad. He would just pitch a fit every time he had to be separated. So Mom allowed the little boy to go back and live with his dad. In the house that in the grandmother's house, there was also living there was an aunt and 2 cousins, 2 male cousins, and an uncle, and of course the grandmother, and now it was the little girl and her mom. The room where they entertained guests during the day had a sofa and some chairs, had a full bed in one corner, another full bed in another corner, and a roll-up bed that was pushed against the wall during the day. But at night, that big room became the bedroom for the grandmother, the aunt, the 2 cousins, the mom, and the little girl. There was no running water in the house. There was no electric heating and cooling. There were no light switches, so if you wanted to come in the dark, you would have to go in and feel around for a string hanging from the ceiling to pull it so that the light would come on. Any of y'all lived like that before? Sound familiar? Now, she was the only little girl in the family of mostly boys, but she enjoyed playing with the little cousins. She enjoyed playing with the brother. They didn't have a lot of toys, so what they did was chase little pigs around for fun, or use discarded cardboard boxes to kind of slide down the hill. They would make mud pies out of mud and discarded government-issued food that the grandmother wouldn't cook. And because, you know, she grew up in a family, this family loved boys. They loved the girls too, but they really loved the boys. And the boys would get to hang out with the uncles, so she felt like she was a little slighted because she had to stay at home all the time. And then, as they grew older, they would do things. I'm trying to figure out, do I get out? They would do things like work in the gardens and pick beans and shell peas and pick watermelons, and they also did something else. Anybody recognize that stuff right there? They would chop cotton. And once when it was, when she was old enough, she got on the back of the truck for 5 days, chopped cotton a whole week, earned $25. Ooh, that was a lot of money, right? But she felt that that had to be something better for her to do. So she enjoyed school. She got to hang out with her friends when she went to school. And she realized that maybe she should probably work hard in school so she could get some good grades and do some things that would mean she wouldn't have to chop cotton for the rest of her life. That was pretty smart. It's a good thing she didn't know that society and her cousin had written her off. So, pop quiz. What do you think it would take for this little girl to get beyond chopping cotton for the rest of her life? Okay. And what do you think may have happened to that little girl? Any guesses? Yep, she became me. And it would take true grit for her to come out of that cotton field and do something different. So that's just a little picture of the little girl growing up with her little brother who couldn't stand being away from his dad. But good thing the story didn't end there. True grit did kick in. And at age of 16, I graduated from high school, becoming a first-generation college grad, and went on to college and majored in electrical electronic engineering technology. I was considered, when I started college, I graduated from high school at 16, and my first semester of college, I was 16, and I was considered jailbait. Have any of you heard what that term before, jailbait? Anybody know what jailbait is? Okay, good deal, good deal. Well, that's what I was. I was considered jailbait, so I didn't have to worry about the boys very much. And I went on graduated at the age of 19 with my BS in electrical electronic engineering technology. And I had interviews lined up all across the country and none close to home. Right before I graduated, though, I had this physics professor. I was always impressed by this physics professor because he would walk into the class with a piece of chalk. Every day he taught the class. Piece of chalk, wrote all the lessons up on the board, left out, and I could not understand how he could teach a class like that and not have a book, but he did it. And it was exactly when we went back to review the notes and look at the books, It was exactly what was in the book. So I was very impressed by him. But anyway, he evidently thought that I was some kind of, he saw some potential that I didn't know I had. And he asked me to come back and get a graduate degree in physics. How many of y'all like physics? Anybody in here like physics? Really? Okay, good. So it wasn't that I disliked physics. It was just physics was a challenge for me. So I told him that I would think about it. And knowing that I had these interviews, but I just told him that, and so I could go on and graduate and go home and go to my interviews. And I was looking at these interviews, and like I said, none of them were close to home, and I was still like 20 years old at that time, and I didn't really want to leave Mommy and Daddy. But, you know, that's where the jobs were, so that's where I was going to go. That physics professor called me up at my house, and he said, I thought you were coming back to school. And I'm like, well, I got these interviews to go on. He said, no, 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 come on back to school, I'll get you money. Money. Okay, I could get money, I can go to school, and I wouldn't be far away from Mom and Dad. But physics, y'all? Physics? True Grit had to kick in again because I had to accept a challenge that I knew was going to be a challenge, but it helped me to get what I wanted. So I did go back to school, and that was my physics professor that inspired me to come on back and get that degree in physics. And I went back to school and ended up completing that master's degree in physics. I also got married and was getting ready to start my family, and I got a job and all this good stuff. And would you believe, about a couple of years later, that physics professor called me up again. Let me go back and let you look at him. Calling me back again saying, I'm getting ready to start this PhD program. I want you to come back and get your PhD in physics. Now, like I said, I was married, I was working full-time, had been doing this for a couple of years. Means I had bills, so I couldn't quit work, and I was getting older, so it was time for me to start my family. But because he had been so good to me, I decided, okay, let me go ahead and, you know, just take a class a semester, help him out until he builds the program up, and then I can gladly bow out and finish the things that I wanted to do. Two things are wrong with that. Well, no, actually, it was one thing wrong with that, is that I realized I had started something, and normally when I start something, I have to finish it. That was one thing. The other thing was I had a male coworker, nothing against you males, I love y'all to death, but sometimes y'all say the wrong things, that told me I couldn't go to school full-time, have babies, and get a PhD in physics. And my thought was, I'll just have to show you. So I decided to go ahead and not stop, but I kept going. And because I have a good God, and because he blessed me with True Grit, I not only completed my PhD, it took a while, it did take a while, never quit work. I worked full-time. I gave birth to 2 children in the process. Those are my 2 babies. I stayed active in my church. I stayed active in my public service organization. And I kept my husband happy enough not to leave me. And there he is down there somewhere. At least he was down there somewhere. Where did you go? Oh, he's over there. Okay. So that was True Grit. And that was God carrying me all the way through that process. Another picture of me and my family, that was my daughter receiving her PharmD, and that was the family celebrating with her. The guy way in the back there, beside the guy with the shades on, that's my father-in-law with the shades on, is my little brother that couldn't stay away from his daddy, but that's him. And of course, my mom and my husband and my son, all my family. So now, that brings me to where I am now. I've had, not ready for that yet, I've had several positions along the way: electronics engineer, aerospace engineer, member of technical staff, physicist, scientist, program manager. And I'm currently working at the NASA Langley Research Center totally remotely. I'm an acquisitions manager in the Office of Science. Lord, I forgot the name of my own office. Y'all making me nervous. Don't do that. Don't do that. But I'm currently a physical scientist acquisitions manager for the Science Office of Mission Assessments. And what we do is we handle the process of evaluating proposals for competed science missions to help the selection officials to select the next Hubble or the next IXPE, or all of those big science missions that go off into space. There's a 2-year-long process before it actually comes from the proposal phase to actually being launched. So we oversee that process. So you all can have all the science you want to help. And some of you may not care about the science, but you do care about the benefits of improving life here on Earth. So that's kind of the things that we do now. And as a result of me being a part of NASA, a part of the next generation of science explorers, that's what we're hoping to encourage our youth to do, to become the next generation of science explorers, because we want to continue that process of making life here better on Earth. I've had the opportunity to enjoy a lot of little extra benefits of just being a part of that world. And one of them is my last project before I accepted this position is I was a project manager for a joint Brazilian-U.S. Science mission. And that was a picture of our Brazilian, we were in Brazil, that was the whole team, or most of the team there, and that was some pictures of me in the lab kind of looking over the hardware. I also got a chance to see Artemis before it launched, before they rolled it out into the launch pad in the vehicle assembly building at Kennedy Space Center. And I also got to go back to Brazil. We went to Recife, Brazil, on a STEM outreach event. And I got to speak to about 2,600 students to encourage them and to let them know that no matter where they come from, no matter what they look like, no matter what their economic status is, that they could have a successful career in STEM, and that's science, technology, engineering, and math. I know you all are in media, but you probably know what that is. The girls were very excited to see another female science person, so they had to take a picture with us. It was a really good event, and we enjoyed being there with them. And I also was, as Edie mentioned, selected to represent NASA at the red carpet premiere of Hidden Figures. And when I was asked to do this, they told me I would have to do just a couple of interviews and it would go real smoothly. They would give me the talking points and all that. And they said it's going to be a media junket. I had no idea what a media junket was. People in media, you probably know that. The person knew me well enough to know she didn't need to tell me everything. Because had she told me everything, I would not have gone. But anyway, when I got there and realized what a media junket was, I had to get some more True Grit to do that without falling apart. Because I realized that I was representing NASA, I was representing Alabama, I was representing my family, and I didn't want to embarrass them. Alabama gets enough bad raps as it is, so I didn't want to add to that. So this is a picture of us at the media junket. That room we sit in, I was with the historian Bill Berry and astronaut Stephanie Wilson. And we sat in that room all day long, basically. And every 5 minutes, a different media outlet would come through asking us questions, and we had to give them answers and stuff. We went to AOL Build. We were over there with the author of Hidden Figures, and then we did a little bit a live broadcast with them. And then it was the red carpet, which I didn't really realize what that was, but the girls at the office said I needed a dress for it. And they said, it's a big deal. I'm like, it's really? They said, it's a big deal. So I did get a dress so I could walk the red carpet. And it was terrifying, but we held it together. And it was a good experience for me. Hopefully I don't have to do that again. And I got to meet some cool people. Some really cool people, so that was good. You'll see Janelle Monáe, Pharrell, and Kevin Costner. Oh my gosh, Kevin Costner. Okay, and also maybe the next year, I believe it was the next year, we got to also go to the Today Show with Hoda and appear on that show for International Women's Day. And of course, got included in the book with Miss Edie. So that's my media experience for all the media types in here. So I think that should be my last slide. It is. Thank you all so much.
Let's see if we have any questions from the audience. If you want to step down, we have just a couple of minutes. And I'll ask you, while you're near the microphone, as a woman of color in science at NASA, what have been some of your greatest challenges and how did you overcome them?
Well, good question.
Let's go here and sit down.
Oh, you want to sit down over here? Okay, she wants us to sit down over here. Is this one on?
Yeah.
Okay.
You.
Yeah, you know, being in a male-dominated field, it was sometimes difficult to get your voice heard, I would say. Because you could be in a meeting and you could say something and it just passed you by. And then a guy could come up and he could say the same thing and they'd say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And I'm like, like that? And you know, with me, I never give up and I always keep a positive attitude. And I guess knowing that one day there would come a time when we would be more recognized and more heard. So it's just never giving up because sometimes there are things you just can't change. You just kind of have to stick with it, hang in there until build your reputation to a point where they know that when you say something, it is a valid, it's a legitimate response to whatever the problem or the issue may be. You can't give up and get an attitude and say, well, I'm just not going to do this or that. You just have to hang in there and just, you know, keep up the good face and just keep going. And then eventually there will be opportunities for you to move into a different area and they will sometimes be more accepting or more, you know, welcome you a little bit warmer because some of the areas eventually are managed by females, so they understand the struggles and can empathize with you in the things that you go through.
How and when did you all find your confidence?
I didn't hear.
How and when did you find your confidence?
How did I find my confidence? You know, I think mine started when I was in high school and being selected to participate in sports and cheerleading. Extra activities made a difference, but I think the ultimate was finding a stage and a voice for myself, and athletics in the theater did that for me as a young person, and it helped to evolve into being a better presenter for my business projects as I went into the business world after college.
And I'm still looking for my confidence.
So we have one final question before we move on to the next event. What was the best advice you received, and what advice do you have for our students?
Dr. Sheila, you can go first. You're the smarter one.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. Probably never give up. I remember the story about the little engine that could, and you keep thinking you can, you kept thinking you can, you just keep pushing forward, and eventually you accomplish your goals. So that would be probably my best advice.
Well, for me, I mean, I can tell you this, that just never give up on your dreams, but be a good listener, find a good mentor, and know that you're going to get a lot of no's, but you will get a yes if you stay with it.
And my advice too, I have a little acrostic. I encourage students to dream, and each letter in the word dream has a tool in it. And the D stands for determination of who you are. Always decide who you are and be determined to be just what you decide. A lot of times we try to be what somebody else wants us to be, and their box may be too small for our potential. So that's why you have to define yourself and be determined to become just that. The R is for reach for the stars, reach for the sky, and you may not get there right away, but if you're reaching, you will always be amongst the stars until you get to that point where you want to be. And when you set your goals, you set them far beyond what you think you can be. Because if you think you can be something, it's not much of a reach. You set it beyond that. So when you're reaching beyond where you think you can be, you will find yourself going places you never thought you could be. The E is for find excellence in everything that you do. Try excellence, be excellent. Whatever you decide to do, if you want to be a filmmaker, be an excellent filmmaker. If you want to be a street sweeper, be an excellent street sweeper. I can't even say it. If you want to be a pole dancer, be an excellent pole dancer. Whatever it is you want to be excellent at it. And then the A is for attitude. Always, always, always have a positive attitude. Always put a smile on your face. Now, it's going to be hard. And sometimes you might have to go into the bathroom and get a few choice words out because somebody is going to rub you the wrong way. I promise you that. I promise you they will. But always go into the bathroom, get all that out your system, come back, hold your head up, stick your chest out, put a smile on your face, and walk by them with the biggest smile ever. Just always keep that positive attitude. It's going to take you far. And the last one is M, and that is that mentor. Mentors are very important for you. Get you a mentor. They'll be there to support you. They're going to get you in line. When you get out of line, they're going to be your biggest cheerleader, but they're going to hold you accountable for everything you do. So just dream and use those tools, and it will take you very far and help your dreams to come true.
You have time for one question.
First of all, Edie, thank you for the book. It's excellent so far, all I've read. My question to both of you is, what can you share with us may have been one of the low points in your life, and how did you get out of it? How did you climb out of it, if you can?
The lowest point in our life. And what tools
one of the
you
low
used to get
points
out
in
of
your
it?
career or your life that you thought
your
maybe
life.
I've done more than I can handle here.
You want to go?
You go.
Well, for me, I think one of the lowest points in my life was certainly being in college and losing my 3 young brothers. In that, of my path of grief might be different. I learned to put myself aside, and I didn't allow myself the emotions at the time because I had a career, and then I had a family. And for me, I learned to detach and be able to cope later. I didn't until after I did the filming of The Last Christmas Ride, that I wrote a novella, and we filmed it in Northwest Alabama. And when I was at that cemetery, I realized I had never grieved for my mother, my father, my brothers, and I had always tried to help everybody else, but I fell apart. When it was finished, the crew didn't know what to do with me. And it was like I had to go home, and it took me about a month. But I don't recommend waiting 30 years to grieve, but I'm saying that we all deal with life situations different. So for me, that was a tool that helped me. And in professional, I think I've just always had to be tough. And when things got hard, I got tougher. And I remember those words from watching my father run 3 businesses. But so I would say that it takes empathy to be able to share all of your wonderful stories. And for you students and individuals here today is know that there is something within you that you think you cannot find. If you will just allow yourself to listen, it will come to you of what to do. You want to say?
What I can recall right now, because I try to put negative stuff out of my mind, and it's hard for me. When I put it out, I put it out. One thing that I remembered is when I was working on my dissertation, and I had 2 professors that didn't really see eye to eye. But
That never happens here.
well, it was, we were getting to the end, and it was my 10th wedding anniversary, and I had planned a trip. And my major professor says, my major advisor says, well, you need to be here to finish this out. And I said, I have a trip planned, and I'm going. And so I did go on my trip. But my thing is, my priorities, my family was first, period. And my husband and I were going to celebrate our anniversary, so we had to figure something else out. Otherwise, I was not going to graduate. And I told him, I said, I just won't graduate. I'm not going to sacrifice that for my degree. So that was kind of a low point, but we worked it out. And I just remembered my priorities. I kept them like I had planned, and just tried to work with the professors to try to work it out so that I could graduate, and we did come to a compromise of what we needed to do and how we could move on.
Thank you. All right, let me invite Megan up, and while she's making her way up, help me thank Dr. Sheila Nash Stevenson and Edie Hand.
Thank you.
And we're now going to honor some of the university's trailblazing women, and then we'll be back with 2 more panels.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Megan Whiffley, and I'm the director of the June Anderson Center for Women and Non-Traditional Students. Thank you. And I'm also the chairperson of the National Women's History Month Committee. I'd like to extend my deep appreciation for the College of Media and Entertainment and Dean Beverly Keel to combine these events today and allowing us to do our Trailblazer Awards ceremony within the True Grit program. It is an honor to share our day with such an amazing event on this campus and the amazing things we've already heard from these women. Each year, the National Women's History Alliance chooses a theme which guides our committee's vision and mission for our events, activities, and awards. This year, MTSU's theme during 2024, we recognize the example of women on our committee to embrace everyone and exclude no one in our common quest for freedom and opportunity. We invite you all to be True Blue. We have honored this year as Be True Blue, and the B stands for belonging, and E stands for engagement. An article I read in Forbes magazine about leadership cites that belonging is one of the most critical factors of an individual and organizational success, because humans need to feel that connection. Once they feel that connection and they're accepted, that's when they feel like they belong. In doing some digging for this opening address, I found a webpage from Cornell University that stated people who say they have a sense of belonging feel connected. When a person can bring their authentic self, they are more engaged and able to contribute, thus belonging and engagement. Of course, these words resonate with MTSU because we state in our True Blue Pledge that we are valuable contributors engaged in the life of this community. As women identifying persons on this campus make up over half of our student, faculty, and staff populations, it is our duty to commit ourselves to creating a culture of belonging and engagement for everyone on our campus, the Murfreesboro community, the Middle Tennessee area, and beyond. This year, students, faculty, and staff brought together an excellent calendar of events. One event that has already occurred was in conjunction with Black History Month, and that was the Harlem Fashion Row speaker Brandeis Daniel. Today, our events are kicking off the rest of the month, and we have several events to follow in April. You are all here today at the Women of True Grit program, but additionally this week, there is an Empower Her Bingo, a Be True Blue Lunch and Learn, a Restorative Justice panel, a gender pay gap negotiation seminar, and a Writing Her Story retreat. Next week, you'll see our Women's History Month Board and Brush Craft Night, 2 events regarding human trafficking, the poet Danielle Chapman, several showings of A24's movie Little Women, a TXMD fashion panel, and the Women and Friends Ideas Sharing session. The last week of the month will contain our exciting National Women's History Month keynote speaker, Rebecca Tossig. It is on Thursday, March 28th, 6 p.m. in the Student Union Ballroom. You're all invited, by the way. Please come. She is a disability advocate, an educator, and the best-selling author of a book called Sitting Pretty, which won a Kansas Book Award for literary nonfiction. We are excited and thrilled to have her come speak at MTSU, discussing belonging and engagement as a woman who advocates for those whose bodies look and move differently than most. We will also have our 2024 National Women's History Month button at this event, where this year we have honored Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her quest to advocate for women on all fronts. I'd now like to turn your attention to this year's professional and future trailblazers. Each person nominated embodies our theme of belonging and engagement. The National Women's History Month Committee selected the award winners who are here today. I will ask each of them to come up on stage. I will speak about them. We will give an award, maybe take some pictures. So first, please welcome Dr. Janet McCormick as a 2024 National Women's History Month Trailblazer. Dr. McCormick's nominator wrote, as a communications scholar, beyond her professional organization involvement, she regularly shares her expertise via trainings, workshops, and presentations for campus groups. Over the years, she has cultivated community relationships with both on and off-campus organizations. She has spent many years on campus committees, but spent several years as the chair to the President's Commission on the Status of Women, and has mentored many women faculty members seeking promotions to full professor. Thank you, Dr. McCormick, for your care and dedication to MTSU's culture of engagement. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Julie Myatt as a 2024 National Women's History Month Trailblazer. Her nominator wrote, Dr. Julie Myatt embodies the theme for this year's Trailblazer Awards, ensuring that all staff, faculty, and students feel connected to campus and have a sense of belonging and engagement. Dr. Myatt plans meticulously, considering the varied needs of participants, and helps ensure access to as broad an audience as possible. She has developed the Relationship-Rich Education Series, the idea of which that we are our best educators when we develop authentic, deep relationships with our communities. Also, she recognizes the academic success of our students is only possible when we attend to the whole person. Dr. Myatt, thank you for creating such an inviting atmosphere for our students, faculty, and staff. Next, Ms. Nia Allen has come to MTSU as a dissertation fellow in the Department of Human Sciences, and we welcome her as a 2024 Professional Trailblazer. Ms. Allen's nominator wrote, she thoroughly embodies the term trailblazer through her steadfast focus on engaging others through education while developing a sense of community among individuals. Ms. Allen was instrumental in cultivating multiple programs for both Black History and National Women's History Months, creating engaging programs for our campus. She is a dedicated professional who pursues educating and bringing others together for a greater understanding of diverse viewpoints. Thank you, Nia, on behalf of the National Women's History Month Committee for your programming last month and this month. We've enjoyed your events as part of our calendar and have enjoyed seeing your engagement within our campus community. Please welcome Dr. Vicki Hardin as a National 2024 Women's History Month Professional Trailblazer. Dr. Hardin's nominator wrote, much of her practice in her years of social work has been dedicated to addressing the trauma and abuse of children, family systems, and within organizations. She engages in systems of change, developing new programs, and assessing community and organizational needs, writing numerous grants for local Rutherford County services. Dr. Hardin participates in the Association of Infant Mental Health Associations Advisory Committee as an MTSU representative and has worked with the Charlie and Hazel Daniels Center on programs surrounding veteran trauma. Dr. Hardin, thank you for your dedication to our students, faculty, staff, and their mental and emotional well-being. This year, we had one future Trailblazer nominated, and I've saved the best for last. Our 2024 National Women's History Month Future Trailblazer is Zofia Zagalski. Her nominator wrote, Zofia has fought for her fellow students, specifically those a part of the LGBT+ community. She led MT Lambda as its president and volunteers her time for LGBT+ activities and events. She is an outspoken activist that continues to break through obstacles in her path. She's pursuing a career in counseling to assist those who need LGBT services, as there's a lack of counselors in that field. She works in the Intercultural and Diversity Affairs Center on campus to improve and support LGBT-related events and activities here at MTSU. Zofia, thank you for your being a voice for students so that they may find belonging here on our campus. This concludes the Trailblazer portion of the award ceremony. If you are interested in hearing more about National Women's History Month events that will be occurring over the next few weeks, please find us located on the website at mtsu.edu/JAC, and you can click the National Women's History Month Information tab. You'll find a full calendar of events, as well as some additional events that were placed on our calendar after the calendars were printed, and you'll find graphics of all of the events below as well. There is a description of all events, as well as any Zoom information or any registration info you might need. All events will be posted on the June Anderson Center's Facebook and Instagram pages, and you can follow us at MTSU JAC on Facebook or mtsu.jac on Instagram. Thank you to the National Women's History Month Committee, without whom this month's events and awards would not be possible. Thank you again to Dean Beverly Keel and the College of Media and Entertainment for a slot in the program this afternoon. I hope to see you all at other Women's History Month events. Shameless plug, tomorrow is the bingo night at 4 p.m. in the JUB. And then Thursday is the Be True Blue Lunch and Learn at noon, Student Union Room 210, with special guest Dr. Monica Smith. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate you, and have a great rest of the day at the Women of True Grit program.
Well, we've had a great morning, and I thank you all for being a part of this program of the Women of True Grit, and to give voices to other women. We certainly have a lot of voices in history that have made a difference to women and to men. But it has been my task that I feel is to give more women voices so that we can be heard. And starting today, on my far left over there is, will you raise your hand, Lana King? And Lana is the former CEO of Hallmark, and Lana presided over the network's operations, which was a big deal to keep all that money in line. And certainly, when you're ahead of a company like she is and taking care of marketing and revenue, someone's got to be behind the scenes and an extraordinary leadership skills to be able to do that. And not only was she, was it the first CEO for Hallmark? The first CEO. She also was a part of the Fox Broadcast Company, and there she helped establish Fox as one of the strongest stations in the nation when she was there, and was instrumental in the formation of several of their networks. That was the crown jewels, including Fox Sports, which we know is huge, Fox News, and Fox Children. Wow. And I love this about Lana also, is that she'll tell you more about it later, but she is paying life forward through her Redeeming Love Foundation. And sitting beside her is Paula Mosier Wallace. Now, Paula was the founder of Bloom in the Dark, and she took that and through her own life's personal experiences and turned it into something extraordinary for women that had been through difficult trauma situations. And she's written several books, and she's a producer, she's a director. There's not much Paula doesn't do, and she has advanced her international skills in television and she's licensed in over 40 television networks. Is that right? Okay. And she also has a studio where she does licensed to do different podcast shows and making a difference for adding voices for women that have been through traumatic situations. She is also the mother of boys, and I know that she likes to do game nights, and so we all got some way of releasing life. And next to her is another extraordinary woman. Would you raise your hand, Marion? Marion McKenzie Powell she is a director, a producer, and the president of Legacy Media Lab, which is a full-service media production company. And she and her husband have moved to Brentwood, Tennessee from Nashville. But she's lived all over the world, and she comes from an extremely talented family in the television world. And Marian also is the author, and you can hold up your book, that she has made such a difference with holistic measures and overcoming her husband's bladder cancer, and she'll tell you a little bit about that a little bit later. So would you welcome these lovely ladies to the stage? You know, I was thinking about that when I was writing the book, and Paula is in the book, and these other two lovely ladies are a part of my Women of True Grit. We do a television series of 2-minute vignettes that we started with ABC in the state of Alabama. We are expanding it across the South and having more voices. And I wanted each of you to answer this question. And Lana, maybe we'll start with you. What was your childhood like, and what were your dreams?
Okay, well, I would say my short way around the block, my childhood was great. I had parents who were married for 60 years and very happy. I think I hit the skids a little bit, not at home, but maybe in school, because I'm from an African-American family. I ended up just sort of looking like I look, and I went to schools that were all white. And I thought, well, what's the problem? I look like everybody else, except that on my birth certificate it says Negro girl. And so that just spread like wildfire through. This is in the 60s. It wouldn't happen now, but this is in the 60s. Just spread like wildfire, and there was all kinds of crazy, you know, teasing and all the things that you might expect. That was fine, but what it did for me is make me want to be a little bit more introspective, a little bit more of a loner. And so I'd say my childhood dream initially was to just live a peaceful life. I wanted to be like my parents. I wanted to be a school teacher like my mother. And that was my dream until I got to college. And in college, something switched, literally a light switch came on, and I saw media as something so powerful. I thought the most powerful thing, maybe other than NASA, on the earth, because if you could entertain people and you could educate people and inform them in any way all over the world, somehow I wanted to be a part of that, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. But that is what I pursued, and so I'd say I did ultimately pursue my dreams.
Paula?
Well, I have a little bit of a different story because I was born in South America in the jungles between the Amazon River and the Andes Mountains. Spanish was my first language, but I was born in a commune with a Christian cult, and the world was going to end in 5 years. So my ability to think into the future, to have a dream, was actually not a thing. And it's interesting because I have parents who are still alive and married to each other. But because my mom left the country, I ended up being handed over to a foster mom in the commune, and she was sadistic. There's witnesses to her horrifically hurting me on a regular basis. And I saw my family every day, but I couldn't go to them. So by the time I was 3 and my mom came back to the country and I went back home, I knew that my family was okay with me being hurt horribly, that they abandoned me even when they were right there, and that I didn't belong. And so at 5 years old, when I got raped by a man in the commune, I knew I'd better not tell anybody, because if I told them, I'd just get hurt worse. So that starts you out in a really distorted life worldview. Came to the U.S. when I was 7, had to learn English and go to school in English at that point, and that was a whole nother cultural shock and hardship. And when you were talking about, does anybody know about, working in the fields as a child and doing all this stuff, I was like, I do. And we didn't have electricity to pull on lamps. We had kerosene, if anything. So no electricity or lights, wood stoves. So I actually do have some idea. But you learn through circumstances what you're worth and what your hope for the future is. And in my case, I learned that I wasn't worth anything and I shouldn't have any hope for the future. So where God has brought me and who I've turned into is a huge shock considering where I came from.
Thank you. Marion?
Edie, if I may, I have brought some slides, and I think I
Sure.
have to be the
They
one to
got the
change
s-
them.
yes. You got the
unless
clicker, or you
they
wanna
can do
come-
them from there, or do I need to pick up the clicker?
You may get. Or does she need to be here?
Oh, you brought it up. Wonderful.
I gave it to her. I think.
I just brought a few slides for you today to tell this story because, as Edie pointed out, and much like Paula, I wasn't born in the U.S. I was born in Argentina and raised in Mexico City. So my family, I just brought you some photos of my family because my life started with actually a beautiful beginning. Much like Lana, I had a happy childhood with my mother and my father and my sister. But one day when I was 12, my mother died in a plane crash quite suddenly. And so my beautiful life was shattered just suddenly, literally went from, and you know well what it is to lose. So this was a black pearl. This was incredible grief. It went from a wonderful childhood. My father was in television. He was a television executive with NBC for years, and he ran all of the television for international, NBC International. So I grew up around television and actors and producers, and I knew in my heart that was my dream. I was going to follow my dad's footsteps. I inherited many of his artistic bent, and I was just sort of knew what my life was going to be, and then it absolutely all came to a crashing end because my father was in the hospital for months with a broken back, internal injuries. Nobody knew if he would ever be sewn back together, but he did beautifully. God was great and merciful with that. But it changed the trajectory of my life because then he remarried, and that brought in an entirely new chapter into my life. So that's our first slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, I was just listening to each of you and the diversity of that, and that's what we have today is so many diverse voices that helps each of you. You know, perhaps one story you hear today might fit into your story. And if it is your story, how it could help you to find tools to feel that you're not alone in what you're going through. And, you know, in life, we talked earlier about importance of mentors. And Lana, would you share of the pearls, probably you're our purple pearl of strong leadership, but who was your first mentor or perhaps mentors along your seasons of your life thus far?
I had two, and both of them were really significant. The first one, because I wanted to be in entertainment, and people laughed, and they said, well, if you don't have a rich uncle or something, you'll never break into the business. But I got out of school when there was an actor strike going on, and it was impossible really to get a job. Everybody was laying off. And so I called everybody I knew, and there was a guy who had been the boss of a former roommate of mine who said, my secretary, in those days, assistant now, but at any rate, secretary, is going to be gone for a month. And do you want a job for a month? Absolutely, yes. So after the month, he said, she's not coming back. And if you really want to pursue this industry, I will help teach you. And so I stayed. And now he was not a teacher, but what he allowed me to do is be a fly on the wall. And that was more valuable than almost anything else. He'd say, hey, come on, sit in my office. And he'd put a call on the speakerphone. Maybe it was contentious, and I could say, oh, now I see what the issues are. Now I see the two sides. Now I see what the conflict resolution should be. And so just by having the position of being in the room and being able to hear and see and glean things from the business, I learned and I grew tremendously. The next mentor was a little bit later in my career who did really have confidence in me and in my ability. He saw something in me. And the benefit of that mentor was not only was he a little bit more instructive, but he would open doors and continue to push. And I was always, yes, the answer was always going to be yes. Yes, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. But the doors have to open. And so developing those relationships and showing that you are reliable and showing that you are competent and showing that you will continue to try to step up to the next level was invaluable. And so that person actually hired me several times throughout my journey and opened a lot of doors. And I think, we can't always kick doors down ourselves. We need those people who will believe in us and help us along that journey.
Thank you, Lana. Paula?
Yeah, and for me, because I had been abused by both men and women, I didn't trust people.
Your blue pearl.
Your blue pearl comes into play in this one. And so I remember when I was in college in Canada, British Columbia, the women in leadership were out to get me. You'd think I was just paranoid, but seriously, they were out to get me. And one day, after a couple years of just nightmare over it, another woman came up and said that she wanted to mentor me, and she started defending me with the other women. And it was the first time. It was really cool because she was African American, and it wasn't people that looked like me that were the ones that were standing up for me. It was somebody, and she met with me every Sunday morning. She would talk to me and ask me how I was doing and what was going on. And when I would tell her a problem that had come up with somebody, she'd be like, I will take care of that. And it was the first time in my life I had had somebody stand up for me. And that was such an important piece of surviving during that time, because I was suicidal, part of that. I was a mess. And then when I got older and was able to start healing after I was 34, I started looking for who could I find that would be willing to step into a mentor role. And I started asking. And I ended up with a whole bunch of different mentors because I was like, I need a mentor in business, I need a mentor in ministry, I need a mentor in family relationships, I need a mentor. So I went and found people that would be willing to mentor me in my recovery and healing journey. And that has made all the difference for me. But you never know. Don't put people in boxes of who will choose to be there for you and stand up for you. It can really surprise you.
Thank you, Paula. And Miriam?
Yeah, this is great. So after my mother died and my father remarried, the stepfamily that I began to live with, I was the youngest. I was one of the second to youngest in the family, and so I lost my voice completely, and I went inward for years and years. These were my teenage years, and when I finally left home, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my opinions were. I didn't know how I believed about myself. And I chose to go into acting because it was part of the world that my father had, but I really needed to express myself and be able to hear my voice. And so it was an acting teacher that was my first professional mentor who saw, much like you were sharing with your professor, he just saw something in me and actually helped bring out the person that had just kind of shrunken in the back somewhere. And he helped me develop a voice. He helped me develop myself on stage, and that was just incredibly helpful in terms of self-expression. But you have mentors on many levels. You have spiritual, emotional, and professional. So he was professional. I would say that spiritual was, I moved around a lot. I was a gypsy. I had no roots at that point, and I'd moved to Australia, and I'd married an Australian actor. And I found, I would say, I'll have to say it this way, Christ found me in Australia. I wasn't looking for him. I really wasn't. But God invaded my life in Australia, and it was an unmistakable call. It was an unmistakable moment in my life, and as a result, he brought a mentor to me, and he brought a pastor's wife who saw that I might be an actor, but I was a mess. I was a hot mess, and so she took me under her wing for 3 years, and she mentored me, and she became the mother I hadn't had for years. She became a spiritual guide to me and taught me the scriptures, and actually I ended up going to Bible college thanks to her. So she changed the course of my life. And just can't tell you how. So what you're hearing is how important people are at different points in your life that are going to come and fill in the gaps and what you need. And emotionally, I have to give credit to my older sister, who went through all the horrors, all the difficulties, not horrors, but the difficulties that I did. But she was 3 years older than I was and managed the death of my mother better than I did. I was only 12. And so she emotionally has been my rock throughout my years. And today she is fighting for her life with cancer. So I get to be her rock.
You know, and thank you. And I was just thinking about hearing each of your stories and how it takes a lot of courage to walk through one's fears, no matter what it is. If it's personal, it's professional, and great mentors and good friends make a difference. We say that this is a sisterhood of caring about one another. What lessons would each of you share with everyone today that you think could help them if they were facing some similar situations? What lessons did you learn, and perhaps a tool you could give them? Lonnie, you want to start now?
Oh, I think the first lesson that has been kind of a through line through my life is you need a vision. I mean, you can't wake up in the morning and just haphazardly go through your day. And so when you don't have a vision, and there was a time when I didn't, I began to be just still introspective and say, well, but who am I? What do I like to do? What am I gifted to do? What do other people say about me? They may say, oh, you're so organized, or you're such a detailed person, or you're so articulate or compassionate. Other people can sometimes see in us the things that we can't see in ourselves. And so I do believe that, the Bible says, take a vision, write down your vision, make it plain. Whether people journal, whether they do a vision board, but something that's in front of you, the vision may change. The straight line from you to the vision may not always be there, and it may divert in a lot of different directions, but there needs to be something ultimately that we look for. I mean, that is probably a significant lesson. Otherwise, we're sort of bumbling around in the dark, and we can do that at all ages, not just when we're young. We can still bumble when we're older.
Right. Paula?
Yeah, I was going to say with lessons, our TV show Bloom Today, that's all over the world, the tagline is use the fertilizer of your past to bloom today. And who doesn't have fertilizer? Can you think of a time in your life you had fertilizer? We all have it. One form or another, we all have things that went ugly, that went wrong, that were nasty, our own broken choices, the things other people did to us, whatever that is. And in looking at it instead of the poor me, I do call myself an ex-victim because I'm not ashamed that I was one. I just am not one anymore. And in that space, it's what can I take from the horrible things that were done to me over the years, from workplace abuse that turned into a federal, state, and local lawsuit, to an abusive marriage, to best friend betrayal when she was sleeping with my husband behind my back for 5 years, to, like lots of hurting, broken, messed up things. And every place that I chose to heal from it, because I don't believe God allows damage that he can't heal. I truly believe there is healing, and I think I exemplify that. I was then able to reach out and find somebody else that was hurting and support them in their journey. And in that way, it validated my struggle and pain, gave me an opportunity to lift somebody else up. And even when I didn't know how to get healing in some of my own areas, when I would find somebody that seemed to be lower or hurting more than I was right then, and I helped them, it always, always helped me.
Very good. Thank you.
I have a slide as an answer to this.
Purple Pearl? Yeah.
Need to go through this really quickly. I hope, here we go. It's, what I wanted to say was, From root to fruit.
Can you hear that? Can you hear them well? Okay.
From root to fruit. I feel one of the most important lessons in the world that we can learn is what we feed our mind and our spirit and our heart, which is the root, is going to come out in fruit in our lives. And so if what we have taken in our lives has been tragedy, has been hard, and we have the opportunity sooner or later as we get older to get bitter, to get better. And this is why mentors are so important. This is why counselors are so important, and therapy is so important. And I'm a big believer in getting healed in any way you can. Whoever can bring you healing, get healing, because God would want all of us to be fruitful. He wants all of us to bring light into this world, and all of us in our heart long to make a difference in our lives. We all want to know that when we breathe our last, we've done something that left the world a better place. We've done work that was significant. We've blessed other people. We've helped others along the way, right? And so that's fruit, and you don't get good fruit unless your roots are able to get the nutrients they need to bear that kind of fruit. So that is a lifetime process. But I think that what you feed your roots is going to determine the fruit of your life. And so I do have one more slide about this, but if
Okay, sure.
you may want to keep this tight.
No, you can do it.
I just wanted to mention something. Here it is. Our words, the words that are spoken over us make such a huge impression as we're growing up, and then as we get older, and the teachers and the mentors and the good people and the bad people, the toxic people and the positive people speak words over us, and we also speak out a lot of words. It's incredible to think that when we step into heaven, we're going to have to give an account for our words, but there's a scripture that says we're going to. The power of our words. I brought this slide to show you, because today we're steeped in a world of social media where we are careless with our words. There's so much content out there. We are bombarded with messages constantly, and are we receiving, what kind of messages are we getting, and what kind of messages are we putting out in return?
Yeah.
Are we being careless? Are we being thoughtful? And so if you look at these, this is an incredible study that was done many years ago by a Japanese scientist who spoke words over these crystal water molecules. And I want you to just look at the difference between when he spoke words of hate and I'll kill you and you're ugly versus words of thank you, I love you, you're beautiful, I'm grateful for you, the difference that it makes. So I just wanted to point out to all of us that as people of media, we are messengers. So what are the messages that we're putting out? Let's be very thoughtful. We have an opportunity to heal this world, to make the world a better place. We can do it so consciously, and our words, our work, even how we interact with everybody from the janitor up to the president of the network. The words we speak over each other, the words in our content, the words in our relationships, in our homes, in our families, is so, so critical. So
I think that is so powerful with what you've done with that. And can some of you resonate with that? The power of the way someone speaks to us, and these three ladies are no different than you, is that we all have to work on our mental with life experiences, but preparing yourself when you leave college, or even when you go out into the real world, as we say, or the adult world, and we face different seasons of life's challenges. If you know how to say something to someone that's going through a hard time, or if you are witnessing someone being bullied, or stand up, be able to stand up and be strong and help someone. It takes just a few minutes.
Yeah, I also want to add, we all know we're in an election year, and we're always going to demonize the other side, and the media is dividing our country. And so in this time of divisiveness, how can we stand in the gap?
Right.
Because we're dealing with people, and we're dealing with ideas and ideologies. We might fervently disagree with the other side, but it would be so good for our nation to learn how to have public discourse and civil discourse with one another, and to politely disagree or vehemently disagree, but to learn how to disagree without demonizing people and tearing people down and calling them names and making them feel, talking to them as though they deserve not to be on the planet. That's not true. We all have a right to our opinions and our ideologies. It would be wonderful to recover the art of discourse.
Thank you. This is a question I think about is our mental health in the state today because of our society and the culture that we live in, of people not valuing one's words or their lives, the situations. How do you personally deal with your mental health, and what do you do to find your zen, your peace?
I think mental health these days is so much harder than it's ever been. And as I look at my two 20-something children who look at likes and followers, and there's such a there's such a momentum of wanting sameness or wanting popularity. I think ultimately our mental health is going to reside in our individuality and understanding who we actually are and being authentic in that. And so for me, it is, there's no runner-up. It's number one, and it's faith. And ultimately, I believe in God, so I believe I was created, and I believe I was created for a purpose. And that purpose was specific, and it was unique. And so I have certainly had times in life where I've gone off the rails, or where I have experienced all of the big things that most of us do at some point, whether it's loss or betrayal or death or whatever. But ultimately, I come back to that place of faith, and in that place, I know that I'm actually not alone, and I feel guided, and it is the source of strength. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is worked out, but what it does mean is that in that place, I'm solid. And if I am going to be true to myself, and I'm going to be true to the Word of God, because that, for me, is my creator, then I'm solid in that place, regardless of what my circumstances may be.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as a trauma coach, I daily interact with people who are triggering my own trauma, my own stories, my own abuse and damage and brokenness. And so mental health and the focus on that is kind of life or death for me on a daily basis. And so I actually teach people basic, simple things like faith and prioritizing time for faith, for having a higher power, in my case, very much, God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And where my faith is, it has saved my life and healed me of all kinds of things and given me purpose. But you need to focus on your belief system, on your faith, on something bigger than you. And you need to have a way that you're giving back, that you're serving. You need to take care of your body, so you need to be getting enough sleep, and you need to do bilateral processing or walking in the park, hiking, doing something. Go outside and be in the sunshine. Take care of your body, eat well, have social interactions, make friends, laugh as much as you can. But actually put together a plan to include your self-care and your mental health and your relationships and all those things, because you can get kind of taken out from the side by a death or by an illness or by a tragedy or trauma at any point. And the stronger you are and the more your habits and lifestyle incorporate healthy things, the less damage those things that come out of nowhere will actually cause, and the more you'll be able to right yourself and get back into a healthy place a lot more quickly. And for me, like I said, that actually is a regular life or death kind of hazard, because I could spiral out very quickly if I didn't take extra steps to stay well. And 9 years of doing this full time, and I have an amazing life.
That's great. That's good news, right?
So I created a slide. I agree with everything these ladies have said. I created a slide that I call my good vibes slide because I think there has to be diversity in your life to be able to create balance. And I get obsessed when I work. I'm a workaholic, self-confessed. I'm a workaholic. So that is my drug of choice. And so when I get focused, I really get focused, and I can go for weeks at a time just completely single-minded. And I have to force myself to do this. But I believe that if I can always make time to get grounded in my case, my faith. Some people it might be mindfulness, meditation, whatever it happens to be. For me, it's reading, spending time in the Word of God, spending time listening to God, spending time praying, and growing in my faith. It actually is, that's the root that holds my tree up. So that's number one in my life, is finding faith. And I think everyone that's in this space will say, if you can spend even 20 minutes a day in mindfulness and just being quiet and stilling your mind and breathing deeply and meditating, even if it's not a faith-filled journey, it will actually help you. So I believe in that. I reiterate that I know over the years I've abused food in all kinds of ways. And come back to having to eat well, because my husband is a cancer survivor, and we had to completely revamp our nutrition and our food intake in order for him to find healing. So I've since then learned that I could be next if I don't take care of myself. So I try to eat well, and I know as students and faculty working in a university, it's really hard. But whatever you can do to eat the best food you can and the healthiest food you can and to hydrate well, it really serves you well in the long term. You've got to get enough sleep. You know, cognitive decline begins at any age if we don't get enough sleep. I can forget my address and my phone number if I don't get enough sleep. It gets crazy, and I can get so depressed. So we know sleep's super important. And I believe in hobbies that give you joy. So I've just put a few pictures up there of things that give me joy. I love photography, I love to kayak, I love to cook and entertain. And I do a lot of giving back. So you talked about so building community with how you give back, volunteering. I volunteer a lot of my time, and it's hugely satisfying. A lot of the women that are my dearest friends came through volunteering at organizations, not through work, but through volunteering. You just meet the most quality people in the world. So that's just a little sample, and then I love to speak and share whatever nuggets of wisdom when people ask for that.
Well, I love that, and paying life forward. And I guess many of us in the room do something that we could pay life forward. And if you haven't had that experience, you should try it, because it is so fulfilling to see someone else find joy that perhaps needed it at that moment. They needed that friend, they needed that wisdom, or they needed a hand up, not a handout. And share, Lana, one of the things that you are involved in. I'd mentioned earlier about your Redeeming Love Foundation and what you're doing to pay life forward in the community, because we cannot be extraordinary leaders or be a part of anything, I think, if we cannot learn how to pay the knowledge or the presence forward.
I'll say that the notion of paying forward, I think, started in my mind before it did in my actions. But when I was in California, I lived in the Hollywood Hills, and I lived literally on top of a hill overlooking all of the city. And it was a gorgeous view at night, and I would sit there and I'd look at the lights, and something in me just said, you know, this is pretty, but all that glitters isn't gold. And I could just feel, and I was right up above Sunset Strip, you know, there was a lot going on there, but I could just feel sort of the underbelly of the city. I don't know why, when everyone else was just looking at the twinkly lights, and I just felt there's so much suffering here. And I felt, you know, completely incapable of doing anything about it. Fast forward to now, when I have a lot more control over my schedule and a lot more time, and I've gotten involved with a wonderful group of people. We have a foundation called the Redeeming Love Foundation. There was a book written by Francine Rivers about 30 years ago. There was a movie that came out about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it was really about sex trafficking with a young girl, about child sex trafficking. And so, you call yourself an ex-victim. We call these young people survivors. And we are working to not only get to know a lot of organizations who are helping these girls come, starting at 13, helping them come out of trafficking, create all of the tools that they need to live a successful life. You need to know how to take care of a car, how to write a check, how to cook a meal. I mean, there's so many things. If you've been caught up in this world for so many years, that skills that you just don't have, plus the medical and the physical and all of those things. So I'm spending a significant amount of time now reaching out to these former victims, now survivors, to help them live a life, not of bondage, but ultimately a life of freedom.
Thank you. Paula?
Well, I quit the corporate world after having worked in it in 10 different industries that were not media. And in 2015, when I moved to Tennessee, I ended up in a position of wanting to help people in the ways I most needed help when I was hurting the worst. And this book, Bloom in the Dark, the same name as the nonprofit, is a support group in a book. So 30 different stories, letters, poems that actually give hope and redemption. Every girl and woman found freedom and healing. And if you go to our website, bloominthedark.org, you can actually download the
Can you
PDF
say
of
that
this.
again to people?
Bloom like a flower, bloominthedark.org. And you can go to the free book in the resources and download this book for free, the PDF of it. And in it, you will see that you're not alone and there's hope. Because anything you've been through, some version of it is going to be in this book, so that you know that. And that, when it comes to the ways that we give back, 14,000 of these copies, we've given them to prisons and shelters and halfway houses and recovery programs and domestic violence shelters, because the broken little girl who went through the things that set her up for the big girl traumas are things that need to be addressed. And the stories that have come out of that, where people for the first time felt they weren't alone. For the first time, they saw a hopeful ending to their story. And when the lady at the Morning Star Domestic Violence Shelter here in Nashville came up to me after having read this book for 4 months, it was her devotional every day, was one story. She said, it gives me hope to get through that day. And at the end of the month, because there's 30 stories, she would start it over again. So she brought this dog-eared, worn-out copy of it to me, asking me to autograph it, because she's like, it's what gives me hope. And so there's so many ways, whether it's telling your story, whether it's spending time with somebody, whether it is volunteering for a nonprofit, helping manage a nonprofit, creating media for nonprofits, for messages that matter. Everyone has skills. Everybody has a smile on their face that they can lend to somebody that's struggling. I say you're never too handicapped, poor, or busy to give when you choose that you want to be out there and to give back and pay it forward.
Thank you, Paula. That is so powerful. I just can't imagine. I remember we were at an event where there were over 350 students last year that were around, and I've never seen that much of emotion coming out. But we were in a place where it was very poor community. These kids, a lot of them were homeless. If you can even imagine, not having a place to live, and you're smart enough to get into the school, but you have a president of a college that sees you, and made a difference to find money so that you had a tent to live in at least. I mean, it amazes me of what is out there as we've started giving voices to different women and how we can help each other. And by your being here today is we can help each other. Just remember, you don't ever have to have a one last time. There is always someone that will listen. If you look hard enough, you'll find them, right? I mean, you have found them. And Marion, would you like to share?
It's interesting because I've lived in so many different countries now that it's been starting over every time. So in Tennessee, which I've been here three years now, going on 3 years from California, what's happened in Tennessee, I'll just give you there because otherwise it'd take too long. But sometimes opportunities find you. People either see something in you or there's a need and they'll come and say, do you have the time to do this or would you do this? And so at the moment, I just finished producing a 3-day massive conference for women in media. And it had never been done before, and it was just, and we had Beverly Keel as one of our keynote speakers, who was absolutely brilliant for us, and we're so grateful that you came and shared with us. So, and it was an incredible opportunity to equip and enrich and empower women whose voices, look, gentlemen, no disrespect, but we live in a world where women's voices are less heard and less respected. You've encountered that yourself. We have to work harder, try harder, be better, more professional than the men to be heard. And so we have to be really good at what we do. And so I believe in excellence. And so this conference was really about equipping women to amplify our voices, but get really good at whatever it is that we were doing, whether it was television, film, podcasting, social media, writing books, speaking, whatever it was. Just be excellent at what you do. So the whole conference was about equipping women to do it, and it was a huge success. So that was
It was. I mean, I was there, and I know that just being on some of those panels and hearing the voices of the women in the audiences of what people really need, and that if we can tell stories to put out like the women, you women's voices, all of you that's here, that I have touched my life, and that perhaps I can touch yours if we have more voices that are nominated, is that we want to help other people genuinely to know that their voice matters.
Their voice matters.
Their voice matters.
Yeah.
I grew up in rural community, but in Northwest Alabama, and when I graduated from college in Florence, Alabama, over 50 years ago, it was Florence State. And I remember being so enthralled with the history of Helen Keller and thinking she is a blind, deaf mute. And I was privileged to portray the role of Annie Sullivan when I was a senior in college, to be there and learn more about that, and thinking there's just not enough voices of women in history. So students, we are a group of women that are trying to create a new generation of voices that when we're not here, you'll know that we walked.
Yes, and I'll just give a quick plug to a movie you should all see called Cabrini. It's about a nun called Francesca Cabrini, Italian woman who changed the world. And the movie's just come out. It's the same director from Sound of Freedom. And it's really about a life of a woman. And she came up against all the misogyny and all the sexism and all the no, you can't do that, you're a woman. And she went on to to build 67 hospitals and orphanages around the world and help the lowest of the low, the most miserable, wretched people. And she changed the face of charities in the country, in the world, actually. And it's her story, and it's a riveting movie. So it's called Cabrini. So you really should go and support that film.
And think about this. I was going to ask each of you this. In leadership, because we are here today, too, that this is Women's National History Month, and how important it is for success. What would you think is the most important characteristic of leadership to you, Lana?
Leadership is really caring. When I was getting ready to take the position as CEO of Hallmark, I had accepted the position, but I hadn't started. And I had dinner with another woman who was running a large cable network. And I started going on and on about my ideas and my strategies and vision and all these things. And then I said, okay, but you've been doing it, so just give it to me straight. Like, what is it that I'm not seeing, or what do I need to know? And she said, what you need to know is that the majority of your time is going to be spent babysitting. I thought, okay, that wasn't in my vision, but the reality of leadership is that we are people. And no matter what ideas and visions and strategies you have, you are not going to do it by yourself.
Right.
And so to have people who are moving in a lot of different directions won't serve anybody. So a leader, to me, is the one who can bring unity. And so to bring unity, you have to make sure you all have knowledge. You have to make sure your team, whether it's 2 people or 10,000 people, are supported, they're encouraged. You have to bring I think, a sense of calm when people are moving in different directions. But the reality is, at the end of the day, it's really about unity. It's about getting a group, however large it is, in lockstep, moving together in one direction. And so, ultimately, leadership, we can call it babysitting, but it's a people business, and it's investing in people so that you are ultimately one.
Well, you could ask any publicist that's in the music business, and they tell you they do a lot of babysitting.
Right.
And I grew up around family members doing that. Paula?
Yeah, for me, I found out that if I could find out what the people I was leading, what they needed, what were their sticking points, what was their pain, what were they looking for, and I could come up with a way to help them get that within the vision of what we needed to do as a company, as an organization or a nonprofit, it doesn't really matter what it is, that we would be successful as a whole. So when I ran a mechanical contracting company, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and that kind of stuff, and the guys were laughing at this girl who had no technical knowledge in their field, and I was their manager. And I said, I want to know what you need, because I need you to help me be successful. We more than doubled the profits in the first year. But I was in the trenches with them, literally covered in mud. I was with them, being their assistant, handing them tools at 2 o'clock in the morning at a Publix, working on their systems. I was providing training for them and then paying them for the training and giving them raises. I was finding out why they were in it and what they needed. So I would give them time to go to their son's ball game, and they would show up on a weekend night to do an emergency job I needed done. And by working together and meeting their needs, sometimes trauma coaching, the people side of things, using that compassion and care for them, then they were willing to go way above and beyond to work with me. And I think it doesn't matter what the field is. If that's your perspective, you will all together in unity be more successful because you're supporting each other.
Before we get to, it's so true. Beverly and I wouldn't be here if we hadn't called on our friends, right? And I think that our friends and you as students or professors that learn this, that no matter what age you are, and especially when you're young and it's tender, is when someone touches your heart, it's forever. And if they call, you will show up. And Marion?
Yeah, so I agree with both my colleagues here. What they said was perfect. And I would say 2 other things about leadership is influence and being steady. Sometimes you can be an unofficial leader. You might not be the president of the company or have the title, but you might undisputably, in the eyes of everyone, say, that's a leader among the team. They might go, she's the leader. And so you have to understand that if you've been given that, if you have that character and people look to you in those ways, then just be aware. And what I think is really important is, what I mean by steady is ethics. Be a person of character, because when people deposit their trust in you, there's nothing more shattering than letting them down, and we've all been let down by people in leadership. We all know what it is, and it's tough to be a good leader, and it's tough to be steady. It's tough to be steadfast, to be solid, because we're all walking wounded. We're all in process of getting healed. So guess what? Sometimes we slip in the mud too. And if we do it, if we're in the position of leadership before we're ready, and that happens, it can take a lot of people down with you. So don't ask for leadership before you're ready, number one. And if you are there and you can, go ahead and get healed on your weekends and evenings and do the work you do. So show up when you have to and be steady, be a person of character, have ethics, take care of people. If you take care of people, they will follow you anywhere. So it's not about power over people. It's about influence, and it's about being able to bring out the best in them so that it becomes a team with a captain, but it's a team. And that's really true leadership, I think.
And I'd like to add to that is, what is a key, do you think, is your perspective is a key to success? Each of yours.
I will say two things. One is kind of macro and one is micro. The micro was a college professor I had who said one day, you know, if you just show up and you're willing to put in a 40-hour work week, you're going to be ahead of 90% of the people. And what I found is it's true. And you get into the workforce and then people take a little bit longer for lunch, or they're doing their little personal emails instead when they're really on the clock, and finding those places to cut corners. But if you ultimately go in with your whole heart and say, I'm going to put myself, I'm going to launch myself into whatever this task is with my whole heart. I'm going to be competent and I'm going to be reliable. You will ultimately become indispensable. And in these days when we've got AI and everything else as competition, it matters that we're competent and reliable, and people know, particularly those people who are in leadership, that we are willing to go the distance and we are willing ultimately to become indispensable based on that. That's the micro. The macro is really more of a philosophy, and that's a question, which is, what is your idea of success? And as I sort of came through the ranks, the idea was the ladder of success, which was this vertical ladder, and you would climb up it, which meant that wherever you were, someone was above you and someone was below you. And maybe you really hadn't made it until you were 2 rungs up. And the fallacy is that I saw so many people happy in their careers. Let's say you're a salesperson and you're out and you're with people and you're operating in your gift. And you say, yeah, but I could double my income if I was up that ladder in management. And so you take that job and you find out that's a completely different skill set. And now you're in an office and you're pushing paper and you're not out using your gift. And so you're making more money, maybe, but you're miserable. So is that successful? And so my philosophy has been, if that ladder is horizontal and we look at it more, that our life is really a journey. And that we all live in seasons. There may be a season of childbirth, there may be a season of working for a company, a season of being an entrepreneur. They're all a season of taking care of elderly parents, a season of being a student. So as we look at each of these rungs of the ladder as our journey, and if you're in it and you live it and you glean everything from it and you find wholeness in that, it doesn't mean it's your favorite season in life. But that can be a very successful season, and then you continue on to this journey as opposed to someone's up here or someone's down here. Each part of your life can really be successful. And I think it's like a steamroller. You gather steam, and I think at the end of your life, you can look back and say, I did it, I accepted the good and the bad, and each part of my life I lived as successfully as possible.
Thank you. Paula?
Yeah, so my definition of success I know is very different from a lot of people's. And for me, it is, am I walking in my purpose from a sense of eternal value? So when I'm gone and I'm not here anymore, how rich I was, how big my house was, how big my retirement plan was, I don't think people will necessarily care. But if I walked and lived in a way that it helped people, it changed people's lives, it made a difference, then I'm still around making a difference when I'm not here anymore. And so for me, success is, could I die today and be thrilled with who I became and the legacy that I left for people to make a difference. And to be honest, I could die on my way out of here, and I would be thrilled with the life that I have had the opportunity to live, despite all of the fertilizer, because I got extra. But I think that I have also been able to bloom, to have beauty in life and to appreciate it at a level that most people can't, because I know how dark and ugly it can be. And so from that perspective, I think success is all about living to your potential and doing it in a way that it serves others and makes a difference.
Mary?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's true. I think because I've lost, I didn't just lose my mother, I've lost really important people in my life, many people. So there's been a lot of black pearls in my life. So for me, success is having close relationships with people who I love dearly, and having them be part of my life today. To me, I cherish them, and that is success. To have a happy marriage, I had one marriage, when I was, as a matter, my first marriage was not successful, my second marriage is, and that has made a huge difference in my life. It brings me great pleasure and great joy and great satisfaction. So having close friends, close relationships, to me that is success personally. And then professionally, if I can, very much like Paula and like Lana and like you, if the work I do can make a difference and make the world a better place in some way, that is enormous satisfaction. And I do a lot of work in my company pro bono, because someone will come to me and they'll present me with a project, and I'll go, I have to do that. I just have to do that. I have to do that for that person. That will make a difference in the world. That will help X, Y. So that sort of thing happens. So success is also being able to there's some kind of doing work that's, I'd call it integrity in a way. It's really kind of being true to yourself, doing work that's true to yourself, who God's made you to be, and being able to give that back in a way that enriches others is not only so deeply satisfying, but I think that to me is success too. So.
You know, and I hear from each of you too, is that I say that it's being deliberate today, you know, in what you're doing.
Very intentional.
Very intentional of what to do. Could we have students that would like a couple of questions you'd like to ask? So come to the mic, or anyone that would like to ask a question of these ladies. Actually, I see them smiling. You want to come ask a question? Any of Allie, you got a question for them? Okay.
For Lana, as you went up the corporate ladder at a TV network, what was your experience as a woman in a male-dominated field, and then how did you pivot or adapt to find success in that environment?
I would say that as I looked at what was at stake, it seemed enormous. This is even before we had a lot of streaming. So it wasn't like manufacturing. You'd have 100 products and next year you have 200. Television comes and goes, as you know, right? A show launches. What's the rating? What did it do? How much did we make? And so lives are changed and careers are made and billions of dollars are made, and it comes and it goes in an instant. And so as I was in environments normally and at the level that I was functioning, there weren't any other women, typically. And I'd look around and sometimes I'd think, why am I here? Remind me again. What I think helped me was to compartmentalize all the negative, because there were those flybys of, those feelings of intimidation. What if I say something silly? What if I'm not capable of this? And so in those moments, and I think in a way, Edie, this is kind of that intersection of being a woman of true grit, right? There's always a point where we can back down and we can say, I'm too tired, or it's too hard, or what if I fail? And then we back down. But to push through that, and sometimes it's actually pushing through what those emotions are and overcoming them. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just putting them in a box, just compartmentalizing them. I remember once when I was asked to testify in front of a congressional committee, and it's just like you see on TV. It's actually very intimidating because you're at a desk and the people asking questions are higher than you are. They're like up and they're looking down at you, and there's all the cameras. And I just remember walking in, and I was not representing Hallmark. I was representing the entire cable industry. Wow. And all those thoughts started going through my head. You know, what if you blow it? What if you say the wrong thing? You know, what if you blow up the whole position that the cable industry has? But at that moment, and I think we all have many, many, many moments like that, big ones and little ones, it was no. It was a pushback of those things. I'm going to take fear and intimidation and insecurity, I'm going to put it in a box and I'm going to lock it. And in this moment, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be present and I'm going to, as they say, bring it, right? I'm going to bring all that I am, all that I know into this moment. Now, if you blow it, you blow it. But at least you're there and you're present and you're bringing all that you are. And I think that at all of those crossroads that I found in the industry throughout this journey, the process was really very simple, you know, and because it was very much the same. And so I think you begin to grow in that process and then learn that you do have a voice and that you do have a place and you have a contribution to whatever it is that you're doing. And so it was certainly a process, but I would say grow through it or compartmentalize the negative and keep going and moving forward.
And you know, think about all the women that have been on the stage either today or around the country, or you hear it on the news, is that everyone is looking for stronger change to have. Like in the workforce, I was with a group of attorneys the other day, and they had a show on, and they were talking about how more companies were having availability for people to bring their children, you know, so because they wanted these women to work for them, and they knew that they had to offer them more. So what do you think of that? I mean, what do y'all think of that? That it is changing, and that I think the respect of men in our workforce, I certainly would not have been able to start the Women of True Grit on television had not been for a 25-year relationship friend of a male executive that believed women needed more voices and that loved the idea of sisterhood and helping each other. But of success, it's more of a, we need more men to do that for women. And what do you think today? Do you see a change in the boardroom and in men today?
I'd love to answer. You know, I grew up in Latin America, so I grew up in a sexist culture, right? And so I just internalized that. That was kind of like just the way it was. And it wasn't until I moved to the States and then later Australia and then different parts of the country that I saw different dynamics. But in certain cultures, it is the way it is. And so the roles are very well defined between women and men, and how women need to behave around men and vice versa, right? And so it was liberating for me to come to the United States where things are better. But I also will say that thanks to my spiritual growth and inner growth, I have learned to collaborate with men and understand they're my brothers and they are afraid too and they want to succeed too and they're struggling with stuff too. And the truth is that the power structure of the world is still in men's hands. That is just the way it is. And so as women, really, I encourage us, we must learn to work well with men, and we can. And I think we have to respect them and honor them and honor their position, even if we disrespect the way they're behaving sometimes, but we still have to honor their position and learn how to collaborate. And the doors that have opened for me in my life sometimes have been women, but many times have been men, because they hold the reins of power. They just do. They have more power than we do. And so it's important to show up to be professional at all times, be excellent at what you do, be reliable, be steady, and you will find that the men in your life will turn around to really, they do most of the time, turn around to recognize that you can be counted on, that you're a steady person, and they have been, in my life, an absolute blessing. So.
When you said respect, I was going to say a lot of times we want to put them down to somehow or another achieve something by minimizing who they are or what they do. And I found out in working in a series of organizations and jobs where I was the female, what wasn't the media part of what I did, though that also fits that category. But if I did know my stuff, yeah, I might need to be twice as good as a man would have to be in my position to get paid half as much. But if I was willing to do the work, and if I was willing to not quit, and if I respected myself, and if I showed them the respect that they were looking for, that people as a whole will respond positively to that kind of respect. And when you do your homework, and you do it well, and you do it with excellence, people as a whole respond to that with opportunity. Yep. And so a lot of people give up and quit because they shouldn't have to work so hard, and it's not fair, and it isn't whatever. But it isn't. Life isn't fair. And it doesn't matter where you're coming from. There's usually handicaps and stumbling blocks and reasons why you have to work harder. But the people who are successful in their fields, in their companies, in their industries, are because, like Lana, they did the work, they did the homework. Like, each of us has gotten places not because we gave up since it wasn't easy. Not quitting.
Can I also say, I love to say, if you don't get invited to the party, make your own. I have my own company. I have my own company.
Look at little Allie.
You know, you just get tired of the shenanigans after a while. I'm just going to run the show the way I want to run it. So, I just formed my own company, and we do things the way we want to do them. And my husband is my partner, and I still need to honor his role, honor his decisions, respect him, listen to him. We make creative decisions together. I mean, there's still that collaboration that has to happen, and the give and the take. But you have options in life. You can take, you don't have to work under something that is oppressive and toxic if it's bad for you. When it works, do what you have to do to get out to create a better situation for yourself, and create your own party if you have to.
Well, I thought we might end our bit then with this, is that Women of True Grit, when I ask each of you what Women of True Grit means to you, but if you can share what you feel, what it was like when you were young sitting out here and you were deciding, did I want to go to that? Do I want to hear that? What advice would you give them as our up-and-coming leaders, and what True Grit really means to you?
Well, what I said before, I think that the True Grit is pushing forward no matter what. Mm-hmm. I think it is developing yourself and understanding what your value is, and a lot of that, like Paula and Marion were saying, comes through understanding your purpose and being not only content in your purpose, but finding that balance of your purpose as it relates to the rest of your life, right? So some of us, I was definitely guilty of this, of being, Marion called herself a workaholic. I was like the Queen of England. It's all about the duty, right? It's all about the crown. Everything else will just work out. And after some really horrible things began to happen, because it's a collision course, what I ultimately realized is, be all you can be, work hard, have your vision, but you also have to have balance. And your family does matter, and your children do matter, and your friends do matter. And because ultimately you don't want just a successful life, you want a complete life, you want a whole life, meaning successful not just in business.
Yes.
And so I think that if we evaluate at every step of the road that we're on, because that road does change. Where am I now? What changes do I make now? How can I give to this world? How can I grow in this world? And how can I leave a legacy from all that I do in this world at every step, if we have that in our minds, you know, I think we become women of true grit because I think we're strengthened from the inside. You know, grit is not just, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. It's a character building, right? We're built from the inside, and maybe it is through grief, or maybe it is through trauma. But there are the things, the fertilizers you talked about that build us, and that's who we ultimately become and ultimately what we give. You know, it's that sort of overflow of our life that I think ultimately speaks of the life we've lived.
Thank you. Paula, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, find a way, make a way. Every stumbling block can be a stepping stone. That's the concept of fertilizer. You can run away from it or you can make it grow something. And just like there's post-traumatic stress disorder, there's also post-traumatic stress growth. PTSD is a thing. You can look it up. And in it, it is taking the thing that was meant to destroy you and turning it into the thing that motivates you. And I have, my youngest son's name is William. And so whenever I'm facing an impossible circumstance and I'm having to problem solve and figure out how to get through it, get past it, get over it, under it, around it, somewhere, I go, instead of where there's a will, there's a way. It's where there's a will, there's his mom.
I just think we should take what Lana said and frame it. I thought it was perfect. I think for me, grit is a lot to do with survival. Let's just start to be real there. Sometimes some things that come your way are so devastating that if you can just get through it, you count your blessings, you know, because some things do come and they're designed to wipe you out. And if you somehow still find yourself standing by a miracle, it can take a while to recover. And so you can't really take credit for any of it. You just somehow get through it. And then with time, if you choose not to get bitter, and that's a choice, you know, and you choose to get well, and that's a choice, then you can have wisdom, and then you can talk about the grit you had when you got through it. But I think there's times where you might be wobbly for a very long time, and that's okay. We need grace for those times, you know, in those seasons. We need tenderness, we need gentleness around us in those times to heal. It takes a long time to heal. So being able to reach an elderly age as we get older, to say, I joke with my husband, he's several years older than I am, and we nearly died 3 days ago. We nearly had a head-on collision. I wouldn't have been here had it been successful. And I mean, it was just a hair's breadth from a head-on collision. And we joke and look at each other in the kitchen and say, we're still here. We made it. You know, we can't take credit for that this time. But I think the emotional wounds that sometimes we are dealt in life, the adversity that gets dealt in life, the loss, the unexpected, can absolutely flatten us. And it can take a long time to get back on our feet. But then in retrospect, when we do heal, then wisdom can come, and then we can become women and men who can give back and hopefully have grown in grace and compassion for others. There's a wonderful scripture that says that you overcome and that you go through trials so that you can then help someone else up the mountain when they're going through that trial. And that's how I like to see my life. The book that I wrote, by the way, which it's not a commercial, but it's about how we spared my husband's life from cancer because the doctors didn't give him a chance. And we found another way. And the book is about how God showed us another way. And that was grit. I have never worked harder in my life than that year that I worked to try and save my husband's life. Because every waking moment was how I can pray, how I could think, how I could do something to save his life. And when we got the final words, he's cancer-free, he's going to make it, he's fine, and he's been cancer-free for 12 years now. It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable win. So that's a season of grit in my life that I'm so proud of, and I give God all the glory to that. Yeah.
Well, I thank each one of you, Lana, Paula, Mary.
Can I add one really quick thing? Because it's super important to me. Grit to me also means having the courage to ask for help.
I agree with that totally. But all of these women have certainly given us some really good information and knowledge. And could you give them a round of applause? Thank you, Beverly, for allowing us to do it. And we have one more panel, and so hang tight.
Immediately to my left, we have Kelly Lang, who I'm a huge fan of, so I'm going to try not to fangirl out over her. And when I think of Kelly, the first thing I truly think of is a Renaissance woman. She is, she is a walking, talking, singing work of art. From the way she dresses, to the way she communicates with others, to the beauty she creates in her home and everything around her. You've probably heard of her as a recording artist. She's also a songwriter whose songs have been recorded by George Jones, Lori Morgan, Jerry Lee Lewis, B.J. Thomas, and Ricky Skaggs. She's the author of I'm Not Going Anywhere, which offers life lessons she learned as she shared her experience fighting breast cancer. And she's a member of the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame. Next to her, we have Allie B. Gorey, who drove today from Birmingham, yesterday, to see us. And she divides her time between New York and Alabama. She is a disability inclusion consultant, as well as a performing theater artist who's on a mission to build a more inclusive world. Born with low vision, she frequently speaks about disability awareness and inclusion while teaching acting and dancing classes to other aspiring performers with disabilities. She organizes nationwide trainings to promote the inclusion of people with disabilities in the workplace. She co-produced and hosted ABLE, a series which you can find on Amazon. And when she's not auditioning for roles herself, she is dedicated to helping improve the lives of others. So we have Allie. Next, we have Anastasia Brown, an award-winning entertainment industry veteran who has experience as a label executive, artist manager. She discovered Keith Urban, you might have heard of him. Music supervisor and content creation. She served as a judge on the TV show Nashville Star, which inspired her to write the book Make Me a Star. Industry insiders reveal how to make it in music. She has a fascinating and unique story to share. Can't wait to hear from her. And then finally on the end, we have Gina Miller, an entertainment executive and social justice activist who's known for advocating for recording artists. Whether or not she works with them professionally, they all come to her for advice. She's Senior Vice President, General Manager of Monarch, formerly Entertainment One. Do I say Monarch or just, okay. She oversees day-to-day operations and creative output for Nashville, including Monarch subsidiaries and Light Records and Indie Blue Music. She also leads the Nashville network of the National Association of Black Female Executives in Media and Entertainment, and twice has been included in Billboard's Women in Music issue of the industry top female executives. She's on the board of the Recording Academy. She's on numerous task forces. If it's happening, she's in the middle of it. So, you know, I'm just going to start. Gene, I'll start with you on the end. One thing we've talked about throughout the day is while you recognize the speakers today for their success, what you might not know is the challenges, the struggles, the obstacles they overcame to be here today. So, Gina, let's tell us your story.
Okay. Well, thank you, Beverly, for that introduction. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you, other amazing women. Women's History Month, we should be gathering more and more every day, so I love it. My story started in Memphis, Tennessee, where I was born and raised, just a few hours away from here. And I like to think of it as my mother's house being the nucleus for all the things that have evolved. My neighborhood where I grew up, in my mother's house, the house that we grew up in was probably the size of the square that I'm sitting on, really. But in that house, we had in our den 2 pianos. My bedroom had an organ at the foot of it. I have a sister who's 13 years older than I am, and I just shared at Capitol Hill the other day this story that I wanted to play the clarinet in 7th grade band, and because my sister was ahead of me, and we had a flute at the house. My mother said, no, you will be playing the flute. We have one. So growing up in that house with 2 pianos, an organ, a flute, and a whole bunch of other instruments, because my mom taught her special ed classes music. Music was just a part of my life. I feel like I was born to do music. And looking around my mother's house, I feel like there's so many trophies and certificates and awards and plaques and all the things that once upon a time I felt like they were just memorabilia that suggested and confirmed the things that I had done, when really looking at it through the lens that I see myself now, it's affirmation of who I was born to be. And so my church home was in that same neighborhood. My mother played the piano at church when I sat behind her every Sunday. The colleges that my parents went to, and I say the college where my parents went was in that neighborhood. Stax Records was in that neighborhood. My first music that I bought as a 45 was in that neighborhood. So I would just like to say my story starts and still continues to be a big part of my upbringing in Memphis, Tennessee, that brought me here. I've been in Nashville now 30 years, so Nashville is very much so home. My kids are actually now Nashvillians. They were born and raised in Nashville. Coming into the music industry, I met somebody who knew somebody, and that person, I saw him as someone I needed to know. We were at football games week after week for children's, Pee Wee, whatever, in Brentwood, and this was the only man that I saw getting out of a Porsche like every Friday. It was middle class, you know, SUVs, Camrys, whatever the case may be. He got out of his Porsche, crammed into this Porsche, might I add. So I thought, okay, this is somebody I need to know. I walked up to him, said, I need to know you. He started talking to me about music. What kind of music do you like? He named all these artists, all these songs. And I said, what do you know about this? This is my music. These are my songs. And he's like, I run a little record label in Nashville, and these are our artists and the music that we put out. And I said, well, you should hire me to work there. Long story short, he said, I don't do the hiring, I'm the CEO, but I'll introduce you to the then president. That president said, I don't have any jobs, but you're happy, you know, if you want to come hang out and see what we're up to. I hung out for almost a year, like right at a year, for free, every day, walking in there like they were paying me, giving it the best that I could give it, until they said, we'll offer you a part-time coordinator job. And I took it. That was 21 years ago, and I'm still in the building. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it.
All right. Anastasia?
Hello? Hello? Oh, thanks. Yes, love that. Thank you for sharing. I moved here in 1990. My father was an Episcopal priest in Denver, Colorado. So I sang in choirs. I played keys in bands. My high school Pat Benatar cover band was called Incognito. And my college band, I played keys and sang lead, was called What the Funk. And me and this dude, Eric Cole, who's at BMI in New York now, we just love singing together. And I did not have an in the music industry. I mean, my dad talked about having a calling, and I was so worried my calling would be becoming a nun, and I kind of like boys, so I was like, oh, please that not be my calling. And thankfully it wasn't. And but I didn't know. I noticed God winks all my life. Jesus spoke to me when I was in 6th grade, getting beat up every day, and I just knew that I was a part of a bigger picture, and that God was going to guide me the right way. So I always looked for God winks. And so when I put that band together, I liked getting the musicians, convincing them that I was a great singer. I used to be. And then picking the songs, getting rehearsals, getting us gigs, pretty much everything that a manager and an artist, music supervisor does, which I didn't even know those jobs existed as a priest kid. And but I knew there was something. I was either going to be a journalist, which is what I graduated broadcast journalism at University of Florida, moved to Nashville in 1990 saying, okay, I'm going to just inch closer and keep looking for Godwinks. And so my very first job was not even in either category that was my passion, and I was very frustrated, which a lot of people out of college, you might have to take a job that you don't like, you don't want. I got a job offer from CNN, and I didn't have a trust fund, so I couldn't afford to take the job I wanted to take. So I had to take a job that I could afford to take, and it was producing fashion shows at Parisian. I'm like, oh God, what a waste. This is not using my brain. But when I was a judge on Nashville Star, that first stepping stone really did help. I didn't need a stylist because I had that experience with fashion. So that was my first lesson of taking advantage and learning from every single stone you step upon, even if it's not the one you want. And to show up just at all times. Speaking of showing up, 1993, I go to ASCAP for an album release party. Kennedy Rose, they were on Sting's label, which was run by Miles Copeland, and he looks like Andy Warhol. And I don't know if you know Miles Copeland, but he's The Police, Sting, R.E.M., Fun Young Cannibals, Squeeze, Go-Go's, IRS Records. He's a legend. Thankfully, I didn't know that. Naivety can be a blessing. So we met at this album release party. He's very daunting looking. His father founded the CIA, quadruple black belt, just pure muscle, brilliant. Stuart Copeland, his brother, is brilliant too. They're all brilliant. And here I was, 26 years old, and I went, we had a 30-minute conversation. I knew I was going to work with him, and he knew I was going to work with me. He was looking for someone to establish a company in Nashville, Paris, London, and LA, and then Nashville was his fourth. And he just knew it. And thank God I didn't know about his history when I first met Sting. He said, now what do you do for Miles? I went, oh, we're equal partners. I'm 50-50 partners with him. He's like, he's never done that. You know, when people ask me where Miles is, I say he's at the beach eating the sharks. I'm like, I'm really glad I didn't know that before I negotiated my deal. Anyway, he believed in me at a time where women were not really respected on Music Row. I was maybe one of three. There's a couple female managers, no females running any companies at all. And Miles frequently asked me when he would join me in meetings, do you want to move to LA? Because these men do not treat you with very much respect. And I said, if I move to LA, how am I going to help Nashville? And I'm okay with it. I don't take offense to whatever. I just know that I have to respond with respect, and then I'll get respect because I'm never going to give up. So I signed Keith Urban when no one believed in him, and then continued to sign lots of good artists and create lots of great duets for Sting with the Waylon Jennings and Tammy Wynette and Toby Keith. And I let music and God guide every decision I made, and I'm sure we're going to talk about pivots because I had to make several of those. But kind of listening to what made me happy the first thing I thought about when I woke up in the morning is what I pursued, and I call those God winks. And because sometimes life can be confusing, and if you just think about what brings you most joy, that's typically a God wink.
All right, y'all. So I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and when I was born, the doctors told my parents, we think your kid is blind. And my parents were very, very terrified. I have a rare eye disease called optic nerve hypoplasia, and I've never known what life is like with 20/20 vision, and I actually don't really care to ever know because I'm happy here. But I have very little, only shadow vision in one eye, and then my right eye, I see through a little tunnel of sight, and it's all I've ever known. And so I grew up immersed in musical theater of all things. And I loved performing and knew that it was exactly what I wanted to do. I wrote a book in first grade called Allie B and Harry Gary Take Manhattan. And Harry Gary was my sheepdog that I wanted. So I knew I was going to New York. I knew I was going to go do the thing. I also knew that I had an eye disease that made it a little tricky. I grew up always being the only kid with a disability in my dance classes, in ballet, in acting, in voice. I never saw anyone like me. And it was a little confusing. And I had a moment with a voice teacher when I was 13, and she said, Allie B, it's time we start teaching you how to advocate for yourself. Because if you really want to do this on a professional level, you got to let people know what you need so that you can thrive. And as a 13-year-old, no kid wants to hear that they have to, make a speech about what accommodations they need, or how when they audition for a play, they need their script in size 20-point font. But I had to learn how to do that. Fast forward to another little piece of my story that taught me more about being an advocate, because that's such a key part of my life now. When I was 15 years old, I met another woman mentor who was a low vision doctor. And she told me that the state of Alabama had just passed a law that would allow people with low vision to drive a car. Don't follow me out of here, y'all. With a specialized license and 2 years of training with an occupational therapist, and I have glasses that look like they're from the Jetsons. They are telescopes, and they're kind of wild. But hearing that, I told her, well, does everyone know this? Does every kid get these glasses? And she told me that it was really tricky, and low vision isn't always covered by insurance and all this stuff. So I knew I wanted to work to make sure that anyone with my eye disease or any eye disease that resulted in low vision could get the tools and technology they needed to thrive. So that was another piece of my story and piece of me. Now, fast forward, I studied musical theater for 4 years at a BFA program, and then moved to, of course, New York City, where I found myself again being in these auditions as the only disabled person in the room. And the only person, and there were probably a lot more who were not disclosing, by the way, because you can always have that choice. But I found myself always having to tell the choreographer, hey, when you teach this dance, I'm going to stand right by you and I'm not going to switch lines. Or talk to the director about how I need, when I get to a space, to walk the space and make sure that I, don't fall off the edge of the stage. Things like that. But I was really concerned that this industry, the theater industry, that I felt was so inclusive and that gives us so many opportunities to see ourselves, I wasn't seeing anyone with disabilities. At the time, 0% of actors on Broadway had disabilities. In Actors Equity, it was like 1% for the entire union. So that was really, really disheartening. And I wanted to start working to change that in New York when I was living there. And so that allowed me to begin to work with other disabled actors, both on Broadway, on national tours, in the industry, some in film and TV as well, to really have the discussions and work with our unions and Casting to Society about how to build a more inclusive theater industry for disabled folks. Pivot, 2020, the pandemic. I get out of New York because you don't want to ride out the pandemic in New York City. And I came back to my hometown of Birmingham. Never saw that one coming, but found there that the theater industry and the arts as a whole were not talking about disability inclusion at all. And so now I find myself doing a lot of disability work to make sure that theaters especially, now I love working with businesses and other arts organizations, but when I talk about disability inclusion with a theater, I like to talk about 360-degree inclusion. And what that means is we're not just talking about disability inclusion for the patron, right? Yes, we do want that. We want shows to have things like large print programs, interpreters, tactile tours, things like that, yes. Audio description, we love it. But what's also important is that admin positions, artist positions, creative team positions, there is space and room, and that they are designed with accessibility and disability inclusion in mind. So that's the kind of work I'm up to right now.
Well, how can you follow that? It's like, great. My name is Kelly Lang. I'm a singer, songwriter. A little bit about my story. My dad was Conway Twitty's road manager for 25 years. And I had I thought it was a very normal upbringing, but now on this side of it, I realized it probably was a little unique. I didn't know that Conway was that big a deal. He was just like an uncle to me, but I was born in Oklahoma, the youngest of 4 kids, and I was always immersed around music because of being around Conway and Loretta and George Jones. It was really nothing to have one of them call the house for advice from my dad. And I now look back on that, and I have no regrets, obviously, but there's things I would have asked them in hindsight. I like to live in the present now because I realize how many opportunities I might have wished I had gone back and asked advice on. But when I was young, I got to meet a lot of artists because of that. And one of them in particular I want to talk with you guys about is Olivia Newton-John. She and I met when I was 6 years old. I remember it, she does not. So it was kind of I was fangirling out because I adored Olivia. Little did I know that many, many years later, I would become very close friends with her. As a matter of fact, I've brought one of my books with me today, and she wrote the foreword to my book. When we met, we connected on many levels, on the fact that we're both singers, songwriters, know a lot of people in the same community, but as breast cancer survivors too. And obviously we've lost her within the last year and a half, and that has been a real hardship on me. I miss her terribly, and I learned so many life lessons from her, and some of the lessons that I learned are sprinkled throughout my book, and I'm going to be giving away my book to somebody here today. I want you guys to, if anybody's going through what I went through almost 20 years ago, it's been almost 20 years since I was diagnosed. Maybe this book will help you. Maybe it'll be a light of inspiration for somebody that might be going through that. Or maybe you know somebody that could use some advice. But I feel that, we're talking about things that happen to get us to where we are going, like pivoting, you were saying, Anastasia. The pivot for me was I thought I was going in one direction and the doctor thought otherwise. So he said, no, you're not going to be singing this. You're not going to be doing that. You have to heal. You have to go through cancer. You have to go through chemo. I do not look good green and bald. I'm just going to say it right now. So that was not my best friend, but it was something that I didn't choose to go through, but I am so grateful that I got to go through because it made me a more empathetic, I think more kinder person. I see love quicker. I recognize, I realize the importance of things in life now. It's not just about what I used to think it was, like award shows or whatever. Now it's just like, wow, did we connect from a heart level, And I think music really is that key to me. It has nothing to do with fame or fortune. It has something to do with what you were saying with God Winks. As a matter of fact, I recently wrote a song called I Think It's Jesus, and it's all about God winks. It's like, do you get chills on your arms? Well, what is that? Is that a universal thing we all go through? Yes. So I love to write songs that really connect with things that we all experience. It doesn't matter age, anything. It's all a human experience that we're going through, and I like to share with that through my music. And I am currently married to the love of my life, T.G. Shepherd. He's a country singer. Woo! Yes. He's sitting there being supportive in the middle there for me, but we've been together 23 years now, and I'm just so proud of our relationship and our marriage, and I'm happy. I'm happy, Bev. So.
Good.
Here's me.
Well, since this is called Women of True Grit, let's talk a little bit about some of the tougher times and how you were able to get through that. So, Gina, we'll start with you. When life has thrown you a curveball, how did you keep going? How did you pivot? How did you find your way out of that tough time?
Well, I think let me talk a bit about being at work, because I think for the last 20 plus years, my life's been largely centered around work, kids. I'm a single mother and have been for about 16 years now, so my children have grown up in the industry with me being a single working mom. And the pivots and the darker times usually come, well, here's a story. I walked into Light Records. You read about Light Records. I walked into Light Records, ironically, during the darkest time of my life. And the darkest time of my life at that point was knowing that I was facing a divorce. I walked through that office every day hoping to have a job, because I knew I was going to need something more than what I was doing. I was teaching at the time. I'm also a licensed music teacher. And I knew I needed to do something different. I knew that there was something more for me to do. I knew that there was something else that I was going to have to do. And I think, that's what grit is, right? It's that thing that keeps you going and pushing to persevere and to be resilient, even when the odds say that you should be different. I mean, if we're honest, where I grew up, I should have not made it to probably like 10. I survived 10. So the next stats would say, my mother was also divorced. So the stats also say I shouldn't have gone to college. The stats say I should have been pregnant as a teenager. The stats would say a lot of things that I've been able to overcome. So in my life as an adult, I don't know that I feel that and maybe there's something wrong with me, Bill, but I don't know that I feel that there's much that knocks me down that I don't choose and decide with God's help to just get back up and keep going. Like, there's no time for that. There's no room for that. There's no excuse for that. Everybody has a capacity. Mine is just probably too open than it needs to be, and that's just the truth. All of this is not healthy, and I'm fully aware of that for any clinicians in here. But I do think that my purpose seems to be the driving force for anything that comes against me. And I look at everything through this idea that it was welcomed to come to me because I can handle it. It was given to me because I can deal with it. It was brought to me because I have an answer for it. And my responsibility is my response to those things. People who are looking to be inspired and to be encouraged and who just need my resolve need me to have that and need my strength in those moments. And so that responsibility, which is a whole nother thing, like, I was brought up learning that the greatest gift you can give one is responsibility. I have worn that one sentence my whole life like a badge of honor. Give me all the responsibility, I got it. My mother, when I was a small child, made me feel like my life was not my own. And it's not. I'm not even mad about it. I understand that. I had an artist some years ago wrote a song. It was #1 on the Christian charts. The lyrics were, "My life is not my own. To you I belong. I give myself away." I was like, yo, you wrote my life story through this song. And what made it even more special, I got to work the song to #1 at radio. But those lyrics are absolutely what I embody, no matter what it is, no matter if it's good times, even more so when they're dark times. To continue through it all, to just give myself away, to give what I can away, to try to leave things better than I found them when I got there. To dig through it, push forward, raise it up, and keep going.
Hello. I've had two major life events that forced me to pivot. One was very positive, and one is I'm in the middle of. But so I was a single mom. I would bring my son Wilson, Keith Urban, Waylon Jennings. I signed Leon Russell. I signed Junior Brown. I signed Peter Frampton. There's a couple. John Barry and couple other, worked with Sting, and I was a single mom, so I would bring my only child everywhere I went, so everyone knew him. He was in the studio with me, and then in 1999, I fell in love with my only soulmate, and Miles Copeland and Sting kind of parted ways, and he called and he said, "Do you want to keep on going without me?" And we had Beverly met Miles. We had such an amazing working relationship with so much respect. I was like, oh, I can't imagine. And since I'd finally found my soulmate, management is a 24/7 job, which as a single mom, and I had another single mom that we played tag with. But when Tony Brown and I fell in love, and we had just the most beautiful, I know what a soulmate feels like. And then I decided to do a major pivot. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to give. Anytime I'm confused, I give, which is a common theme throughout this day and throughout our lives. But I just gave to the Nashville Screenwriters Conference for free, and full-time job. Just literally poured myself in as Tony and I built our house. And I was like, There's no music supervisors that live in Nashville, and no content creators that live in Nashville outside of Opry and CMAs. I think I'm going to do that because I saw Sting's Sync Money, and I'm like, whoa, that's 6 zeros there. I think I'm going to pursue that. And so someone asked me, a screenwriter asked me if I could get Emmylou Harris to record his end title, and I said, yep, if you hire me as your music supervisor, and I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it. Remember that? And so Steven Spielberg was my first credit for Taken. We won Emmy, and Spielberg wrote emails about how much he loved the music. 10 episodes starting in 43, ending in current time. And I did get Emmylou Harris to record the end title, and Buddy Miller produced his first track for film or TV back in 2002. And so then when I decided I'm going to make this commitment, everyone, not one person said I could do it. I mean, not even one person would lie to me and said, I think you can do this. You got this. I'm like, come on. I was searching for anyone that said I could do this, and no one did. So just like with Keith Urban, no one believed in Keith Urban. I went, I just kind of do, so I'm going to go for it anyway. And so you just have to, when you have that belief, that comes from God. And so I decided to do it full time. Did all the options of Hank Sr.'s books, so I made that movie with Tom Hiddleston. 2003, I optioned the books. The movie came out in 2016. Then I did a movie on Billy Graham and his early years, and that was so fun. So creating content and putting music into film just brings me a lot of joy. Getting money to songwriters brings me a lot of joy. And so I have never done this, but those people in LA, after getting an Oscar nomination, 2 Grammy nominations, Dove win and Emmy win, I just kept that to myself, and I kept on going, and I never stopped. But that I did have to recreate myself because as a woman manager, Tony used to run a MCA, and people like, oh, I don't want you to manage Shadazy because you are married to a competitor. And then, oh, I don't want you to manage Allison Moore because she's on Tony's label, so that wouldn't be appropriate. I'm like, well, shit, I'm just going to go to LA. And so that pivot was a beautiful, beautiful pivot, which has brought me so much joy and brought a lot of income to Nashville songwriters, which is my number one passion. Like, there's one time I was doing Footloose and August Rush, and I got to, August Rush, there was a choir I found in Harlem, and they didn't have a penny in the bank, and I asked them to write a song, and then they performed it in the movie, and then that was the Oscar nomination. They performed, that Harlem choir performed on the Oscars. And that was like, oh yeah, this is why I do what I do. I'm now in the middle of a whole different pivot. Last year, my sister suddenly died. My son suddenly died of fentanyl, and my week after we buried my son, my dad had a heart attack and died in a year. So I'm now, and then my media company, the chairman, talk about wanting to maintain your ethics. The worst time to resign is when you're at your lowest. But the chairman was doing things that I didn't agree with and completely conflicted with the way I live my life. So I had to just do the right thing at the wrong time. And so I'm in the middle of a pivot based on tragedy, but I know that it will end up being powerful, whatever it is. So I'll just never give up. And thank God I have my tribe.
Pivots and challenges, I could talk about a lot of them, but one thing that always comes to mind.
Let me jump in. When I told you this question backstage about when life throws you curveballs, what did you say?
I said, I can't see curveballs, so it's fine. Oh yeah, oh my gosh, that's why I love auditioning. I'm like, everyone loved it. I can't see the people behind the table. It was great. So when life throws you curveballs, right? A lot of people, I love the way you worded this question, because as a person with a disability, everyone always asks me, how have you overcome your disability? And I'm like, I haven't. You don't, actually. That's like an ableist construct. It's something that you live with and that you work with. But what the curveballs a lot of times are the way that the world responds to disability, right? The way that I'll walk into a final callback for something or a Broadway dance audition, and the choreographer says, "But if you can't see, how do you dance?" After 3 appointments and agents getting you in the, like, it's so silly, right? So there are a lot of curveballs where you'll get to the final thing, you'll get to that Broadway 4th callback, you'll get into these really cool rooms, and then you still have people being like, "Oh, but if you're disabled, that's going to be tough, isn't it?" And you're like, "No, actually, tough for you maybe, but it's just because you've never asked questions about this before." So that's a curveball. And one other little one I'll touch on is I've really had to work like diligently weekly on my own mental health. It's thrown me a lot of curveballs in my world. I've had to be the strong one in my family for a lot of things where I was the parent when I should have been the child, and when things were really difficult in my own life, but I was watching it be harder on my parents, especially with medical stuff and surgeries and things that I went through. It wasn't allowed for me to be hard, so I've always had to be that strong person, and I'm finally in my 30s now, and I'm like, wow, maybe I could be soft for a minute and take a breath for my own mental health and well-being, and I can't sing the praises of a good mental health hygiene and therapy and all those things enough.
After all of these wonderful speeches, what is the question again? I'm so engrossed with everybody's story.
When life throws you curveballs,
Okay.
like cancer
that's
or
not a
other
curveball.
curveballs, how do you pivot? How do you keep going?
You know, if you learn to embrace the curve, if you learn to enjoy or know that the Bible says that in all things, you be grateful for all things because they will work out for those who love the Lord. There is a lot of truth to that. And if you can grab a hold of that in the beginning of it, instead of fighting it all the way through, you'll see the sweet spots, okay? So I'm 57 years old. I love this era of my life because I finally am now able to relax. I love that you said it's okay, to just be soft. It's so cool to wake up and just be soft. You don't even have to think about it because you're at the age where it's just that you've already lived through enough life experiences that you trust that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I know it seems like you're in a storm right now, but it always works out. And it doesn't feel like it in the middle of it. Trust me, nobody wants to hear you have cancer at 36 years old with 2 little girls at 9 and 13 years old. I was single. It's not a good thing. And so I fought it, and I fought it, and I fought. I thought, I am not going to die of cancer. So that aggressiveness that kept me alive is also what was detrimental to my being able to rest and just be okay with the ride. So I've learned a lot about curveballs, and I embrace them now, and I giggle now when they go, guess what? So-and-so didn't work out. Well, that's just great. Well, what are we going to do next? So it's just an attitude. It's just an attitude adjustment, it's all. And I've learned to embrace all of that.
So, for instance, your book, which, by the way, is right here and available on Amazon, you share your life lessons you've learned through cancer, through ups and downs, personally and professionally. For everyone, what are some of the life lessons you would like to share with our people today? And Kelly, we'll start with you.
Well, at what we were just speaking about, just learn to trust. One of the life lessons that I learned in there is we are in control of a lot of things we don't realize we're in control of. A lot of us just let life happen to us and we go, woe is me, or wow, that was cool. But I learned that whatever you focus on, you can attract to yourself, and that's good or bad. Like if you're a race car driver and you're going to be driving around a track, and if you start looking at the wall, you're going to hit the wall. And I really took that seriously, and I even went so far as to cut out things of what I desire in my life, whether it be contentment or a beach house or a particular type of car or whatever. It could be materialistic things, it could be spiritual things, could be better relationships with certain people. I cut these words out of empowerment, and I put them up there, and I just prayed. I pray night and day, 24/7. I have great trust, and because I've seen him answer every single prayer. Sometimes they're not the answers I want or thought I needed, but if you just have trust and faith in what you know is for your best, as a parent, he is not going to give you what's not best for his child. He's not going to. And so I put my wishes and dreams out there. I pray over them. I bless them. And I suggest everybody get a wish board because it's really fun to take all of those goals off of it when you've reached them all. It's a fun thing to do. So that's kind of a life lesson I have in the book.
Thanks. Allie?
Yes, so my mentor is my acting teacher in New York. She is so tough, and I love her because she doesn't put up with any BS, right? She's amazing. But she talks to us a lot about knowing what our personal why is and leading with a sense of why, which can be your purpose. But we really go through like a why discovery where you have to state that. And then she says your why, your personal why, will serve as your values and your integrity thermometer. Like, oh, is this project in line with my why? Like, maybe I can choose what I actually want to do versus, as I think young artists, especially when I was in my 20s and in New York all the time, I was like, I'll do anything. And then it's like, oh, but where are my values and where is the values of the team and where can we align and work together and work out of a place of integrity? So starting with why. And then my favorite is a lesson and a statement that I actually went to college here in Nashville. I went to Belmont University, loved the musical theater program there, but I went to a church. Oh yeah, love MTSU too, love it too. It's all so great. But I just love Nashville and this whole city. So, but I had a priest. I went to a church called St. Augustine's Chapel, and the priest there, her name's Becca Stevens. She was an awesome mentor in college, and she always talks about that love is the most powerful force for change in the world. And to me, God and love are synonymous. So I start every day, and I write that down first thing every day.
Awesome. Gosh, lessons, just so many, and I'm trying to be succinct. Well, definitely one lesson that I've heard all day is to give back, is to, that Tyrell saying is to give is so much better than to receive. And it's true outside of gifts. It's true. There was a year that I was getting a little bit jaded because people wanted to have music. I was the only music supervisor in Nashville, and they would say, "Oh, let me take you out to coffee. Oh, would you listen to this song? Whoa!" And I was becoming a little jaded because I was getting all my income in LA, and I was giving so much time to Nashville, but I didn't feel like it was reciprocative. There's just a weird moment because I'm not a jaded person, so I do words instead of resolutions every year, and so when I realized I was getting jaded, and that's what's so scary. Like after my soulmate had a brain injury and decided he didn't love me anymore, I read The Shack, and then I got the movie called The Shack because, it helped me so much, and I think God wanted me to learn that lesson. So I just give, and so it was my year of yes. My year of why not was quite fun. I encourage everyone to do a year of why not, but my year of yes is when Belmont students or MTSU students or a publisher that didn't know how to pitch a song for a movie, I would say yes to every single thing. And it felt really good, a lot better than being jaded. So I do think anytime I feel stuck, I give back and then I get unstuck.
Oh, that's good. This is my year of yes, too. It is. Okay, so here are a few of the things that I can just rattle off pretty quickly that I try to think about all the time. One, expect something great. Expect great things. I walk into every door expecting something. I answer my phone, I answer my emails expecting something, and I'm expecting something great. Period. That's it. That's the first one. The next one is everything you need, you already have. And if you don't have, I've learned now I have access to it. So what I don't have, if Beverly has it, I got it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have friends like that and people in your life, in your spirit like that, you need to keep cultivating. Your people are on their way to you. Keep walking. The next thing I want to say that I think about all the time is just be yourself. It's so much easier to sit here knowing that you're gonna see me again and I'm gonna look just like this, no matter what room we're in, no matter where we are. We were talking earlier about my dialect. For years, I tried to change it. Bev, we probably talked about that. I think I've tried to hide it early on, like, y'all, I'm from Memphis. This is how I sound. And I can't change it, Anastasia. I can't change it, and it's tiring when I try to. So I felt like I had to grow and mature and learn that people will take you. First of all, people just want to be offended anyway and be frustrated about something. There are those people, but everybody's not against you, and people certainly aren't against the way you sound, which you have nothing against. Stop creating rules that you apply your whole existence to that are not real for anyone except for you. You want me to keep going? I got things all day. Let me tell you something. I have to tell myself all day long, you talk about how to stay motivated in this work that we do. This is how I stay motivated. I can do this all day long. I have a mirror in my office right now that I wrote on there, "Not this year," in red lipstick. And if I'm honest, I spent a whole year before COVID with that mirror behind my monitor. It's really hard looking at yourself in the mirror all day, every day while you work. That year, I walked into my office feeling like I wanted to give a message that's contradictory from my personality. So the "not this year" that I put up there is still up there. But words matter. And people were walking in my office going, "Not this year." Like, that didn't even sound like you. That didn't even feel like how things resonate when I'm sharing with people. It was negative. And yeah, I wrote it to be negative because in that moment, I was trying to say something that I didn't have the words to say. But the one word that I put in front of that sentence now that has changed every conversation for people who walk in my office is why. In front of "not this year," I added "why not this year." I wrote "why" in front of "not this year." And now when people walk in my office, it's an affirmation. It's inspiration. It's encouragement. I convicted my own self. I never take on people who I feel have done me wrong. I never do. That was wrong from the beginning. But I've made it right by simply adding one word that changed the whole meaning of the statement. And for everyone that's walked in there, I'm saying, yes, you, this year, put your album out. This year, put your EP out. This year, put your one song out. This year, why not this year? Put your book out. Clothing line, let's get going. Put a shirt out. Cupcakes your thing, bake them, sell them, get them out. This is the year. We have now, 9 more months in this year? Why not this year?
I love it. And just to add a little bit, back in '93 when I was becoming an artist manager and not getting that respect or getting a tap on my butt or just, silly things that a man would never get asked, I started wearing, remember, I slicked back my hair, wore big, huge glasses, wore big, boxy suits to hide the curves, and I was not authentic. And then the second I became authentic is when I soared. And whether someone agrees with it or not, as long as you're authentic, I think you're safe.
Yeah. I had a mentor who introduced me to a female label head because I admired her from afar. When I met her, I was so disappointed. The first thing she said to me was, "I see you on social media with your blue lipstick on, and your yellow lipstick on, and your pink lipstick." The era that she came up through, they didn't wear red lipstick. They didn't wear lipstick at all. They wore, she had natural lips. And the whole conversation was a tone that I remember hanging up the phone, talk to my mom, telling my mom the story. And I'm sitting here thinking about it. My mom does an event every year with the Memphis Opera. And she has been trying to get me to do the event up until that point for years, and I wouldn't do it. My mom got really sick, long story short, and I did the event for her because I we thought we were losing Mom, so I did the event just thinking it was going to be the last time she was going to get to do it. And here I am, you know, getting ready to sing with the Memphis Symphony, and I've got this little pale lipstick on, and my mom's like, where's the blue? So how things come full circle, and that's why you just have to be yourself. And own anything you can own is yours to have and do. Not physically, money, financially, but own the ownership of a thing. Yeah.
Well, we now have an exciting moment because Kelly Lang is going to deliver a musical message of inspiration to kind of bring the afternoon to a close. So, Kelly, I'll invite you up, and I don't know if you want to talk before the music plays, but you take it from here.
This is a song that I wrote 16 years ago, and the one thing I wanted to share with you guys today is nothing is created in vain. And when I wrote that 16 years ago, I never, ever in a million years would have thought this would have ended up so many years later as a commercial for Ascension Hospitals. So any creatives out there, don't give up. There's always something around the bend. You might not even see it coming. I certainly didn't, but I wanted to share. It's the title of my book, and I also want to give my book away right here, right now, before I sing the title of this book. Is anybody in here going through any type of breast cancer or any type of cancer situation? Anybody? Here, well, Edie, have you read this book yet? Then here you are. I want you to have this. Yes, I will. Thank you so much for having me today. And thank you guys for showing up. And I'm so honored to be here. Hope you enjoy my song. And Anastasia, now I'm freaking out that you are here in front row. So, oh my God, I'm just going to turn this way. Okay, here we go. Take my hand, don't let go. Look in my eyes and in my soul. Hold me close, hold me near. Please let go of all your fear. I'm not going anywhere. Seasons change with the wind, but I'll be here till the end. Friends may come and then they go, but there's one thing you should know: I'm not going anywhere. I'd give my heart to you if yours stopped beating. Part your lips with mine. If you weren't breathing, you have no burden that I wouldn't bear. I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be here when you close your eyes. There's no place I'd rather be than here by your side. I'd give my heart to you if yours stopped beating. Part your lips with mine. If you weren't breathing, you have no burden that I wouldn't bear. I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going. I'm not going. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going. No, I'm not going. I'm not going anywhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly Lang, Anastasia Brown, Allie Gorey, and Gina Miller over there. Thank you, Edie Hand, for being the inspiration behind this day. Thanks, everybody.